Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live, and the world is burning. Fascism is rising, and you have people celebrating everywhere about fucking the first prime minister of Italy. What a time to be alive, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, fucking Christ! It's like everyone is just showcasing their true colors. I mean, Jimmy Dore is like the only thing he's fixated on is that she's anti-vax. It's like, really, 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 you're fixing on that,
Right. Yeah, he's
or
doing.
or is it
Yeah.
that other thing that you are fixating on? I mean, okay, this isn't just about Jimmy Dore. We all know he would have done this. This is nothing is shocking to me anymore with this opportunist.
Oi, Mussolini, I fucked your dad. What?
Not everything is bad that happened though over the last week. I mean, there was something positive that happened in Cuba with the LGBTQ plus community, which baffles my
Oi,
mind.
people like right wingers and maker tankies have been turning it around and fucking saying shit like, "Oh yeah, nah, the Russian referendum in Ukraine, mind you, that was forced on Ukraine by a violent war. Doesn't matter if the fucking Ukrainians are Nazis. The Russian government's full of Nazis. Like,
Right.
as they say, don't trust the
Right.
hypocrite. But they're comparing that and saying that's on equal footing to a referendum that was held and mostly pushed by the youth of Cuba for them to be able to have gay families. That's all it is. They're allowed gay families and adoption and stuff like that. It's allowing gay people to have families. And then all the right and all left wing not sorry left sorry liberal westernism is coming in. Being gay is not western. Like, get out of your fucking head, you fucking infantile little fucking pricks.
What makes these people?
Being gay, to be honest, being gay and being straight are the two most abnormal of them. Humans are fucking bisexual naturally. There's no me trying to force my own sexuality. I'm not very comfortable with men because of my own trauma in life. I'm just trying to state a natural fact of humans. Like monkeys and dogs, we like to fuck each other up the ass just as much as we like to procreate. So, like, you know, in all mannerism of it, we're all a bit gay. We're all a bit straight. Being gay is not a choice. Being gay is just a part of that person's comfort. Like, if someone is in, like, I ain't discomforted by things in my life because I made a choice. I'm discomforted by them because I went through certain amounts of trauma and was brought up in a very toxic masculine household. Like, that's how a lot of people operate. It's all about the way in which they're brought up. So homophobia is a choice. Maybe you should choose to not be homophobic.
What this thing with Cuba? Okay, the thing of Italy and Cuba, I feel like it's connected, so we're not going off topic here. But these so-called communists, well, I mean, they're not communists. But let's just call them fascists or whatever. They're basically doing the same thing the chauvinists and the corporate media are currently doing regarding Cuba. Make it this frame that it wasn't a democratic choice of the Cuban people. So you have a country that's more of a democracy than any of the European countries and America, and they actually decide what they want for their people. That's that's authoritarian. Yet,
Ashes was detectors.
and the people in Italy, there was nowhere near the amount of turnout as there was in Cuba. Yet that's considered a victory for democracy and freedom. Go figure. Let's see. Pro LGBTQ, a prime minister that's an anti-Semite, and a homophobe and a transphobe. Isn't it interesting how people overwhelmingly support this lady? It's almost as if the entire fucking Western world is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's like fucking Christ. You get people that you would not that don't normally talk about politics in depth, like talking about this. Like Jeremy of Geeks and Gamers. Most of you probably who are familiar with what I've done the pre Ewoks days would know that he has his own political channel that was basically doing the same, like, oh, SJWs are having a meltdown because of the first woman prime minister in Italy.
Jeez.
It's
Yeah,
not it's not a surprise.
it's not surprising. I mean, this is first worldism, what we're dealing with here.
Speaking
At
of
the end of
first
the day,
worldism, you guys saw it in the
I
chat
thought y'all
on
were
this.
feminists.
You
How
guys
are
saw
you
this
not
on.
liking the femoid in power? I thought feminists loved femoid power. Checkmate, liberals.
Well, Margaret Thatcher was the first prime minister of Britain, and she was one of the most brutal leaders of the 20th century.
We're still not sure whether she's Ronald Reagan or Adolf Hitler or both. Although I'm pretty sure Queen Elizabeth was actually Hitler in drag, but take it as you will.
But with all seriousness, like, what I think the best representation almost of the global class divide, I sent you guys that image earlier regarding that Star Wars mobile game that essentially had which countries played as the rebellion and rebels more. And what do you know? The global north is mostly Empire players, and the global south are the rebellion.
yeah.
Isn't that a perfect representation? The global south, honestly, they choose the rebellion over the Empire. And one of the biggest player base for the Empire was Russia, Britain, Japan,
Oh,
America.
oh my.
But Russia was the highest, actually.
Yeah, why am I not surprised by that?
But the Empire is socialist, guys.
It might be because all the people that don't like Empire are running away from Russia right now.
Of course, we don't know nothing about China because that game was never released in China. But we can only speculate what they would have chosen. It probably would have been maybe the Empire.
That depends on what part of China. If you're in the east, especially the southeast of China, yeah. But well, even that depends because I mean, like the problem is, so a lot of the working class in the southeast of China don't have much money to spend on things like smartphones and stuff like that. So the people who would be more radical, then yeah, nah, yeah. But in the west, you're once again hard for people to get a hold of phones that would be more likely to go left wing. But if those people got a hold of phones, they probably go rebellion. Like China has always been split off in this way. You know, Mao tried to change the dynamic of it, but China's always predisposed itself to the east. That's because of a lot of the interactions it's had with empires. No, there was one time when they did quite differently. Um, that was when them and the Mongolian Empire were constantly trying to fight with each other for um, dominance over Asia and Europe, and that was the Silk Road. And the Belt and Road is literally just repaving the Silk Road with fucking tarmac instead of yellow bricks. Fucking Wizard of Oz.
Speaking of which, don't you find it like really interesting how I forgot the thing between the natural gas that America destroyed today, or was it yesterday? We can't prove it, but
Oh, it's today.
yeah, it's like, isn't
The
it
pipeline,
interesting?
you mean?
Well, they
Yes.
attacked Nord Stream too.
That's what
Yes.
everybody thinks. We all think, like everybody thinks the U.S. like behind the scenes is bragging about it. There's three big ass holes in the Nord Stream, both Nord Stream pipelines between like
one and
Denmark
two.
and Sweden, and like that's pretty much kind of the end of the two
Okay,
pipelines.
I've been thinking about this for a while. I've had a couple of conversations with you about this. I thought originally it might have
Right.
just been Britain that was starting this war to fuck with the other powers, because we're at a point where the imperialist powers are now competing. No, it seems
Right.
more like it's Britain and the US that's doing this to cripple both
Yeah.
the EU and Russia. They feel offended by France's and Russia's going their own way stuff. Germany as
Yeah.
well, but to a lesser degree, because Nord Stream isn't as offensive as France's literal subversions of US imperialism since like 2000s. No,
Right.
people are not confused with themselves. When I say subversion, I don't mean anti-imperialism. That's not what that means. Like Russia subverting US imperialism isn't anti-imperialism. It's just imperialism. They're fighting it out, and so you've got now this competition of powers, and they need to take it out on each other. And the US and the UK. I mean, the US does rely a lot on Russian gas, and so does the UK. Not as much as the EU. We could survive quite
Right.
easily. The US and even more so the UK control most of the oil fields in Saudi Arabia, like directly own. I don't mean like, oh, we have an imperialist relationship, so you fucking have to sell it me anyway. I mean like BP Oil still owns shit tons of oil uh, facilities all over the middle. Stop using
Right.
that word. It's fucking British imperial terms. West Asia, all over West Asia, the Fertile Crescent, all the way into what's it? All the way into even place like Iran. Um,
Yeah, I agree. There's competing powers for sure, and they are trying to bring the EU down, and then like within the EU, you got like these kind of right wing fascists who want to get out of the grip of like France and Germany,
Yeah,
Poland and
you know,
Hungary,
we're
Italy.
starting to see a similar conditions that we saw that our forefathers saw 100 years ago regarding. I don't know if we're in pre-World War One conditions because I haven't read enough on that period, but this is definitely feels like pre-World War Two. There's a lot of parallels.
both pre-World War One and pre-World War Two are quite similar. In 1910, a Great Depression happened that made the British Empire and the German Empire almost stop at a whole. World War One actually technically started in 1910 because the British and the Germans were already targeting each other's colonies at the time, but because neither country had directly used their actual military, because technically speaking, a colonial garrison isn't the same as your actual military, and yes, that is how asinine they are with their fucking shit. So to prevent an all-out world war like the one that happened with World War One, when colonies would fight, it would be seen as a fight between colonies,
Right.
usually. But the British were not taking nicely to this, and the British basically were going out of their way to go to conflict with the Germans as quick as possible, because the longer they waited, the bigger the ships the Germans were building, the larger their military got. So they tried to create a world war situation as soon as possible. World War Two, Britain was trying to encourage Nazi Germany to invade the Soviet Union. It saw it as the main threat to its power, to a point where I won't say they forgot about America as a threat to their power, but they seem to like not realize until like 1942, 43. It's like, oh shit, the Yanks. And then you have Churchill starving not only the colonies he caused literal famines in, but he had everyone in the UK rationing as well. And from what I've heard, he could have had none of us rationing and fed all of the folk in the colonies that were starving off. But the only reason we didn't was because we wanted to we wanted to challenge the Americans for aid. packages, which we knew that they had an easier way of getting that aid sorted. So we used our colonies to ensure that we got as much food as possible. And that's why Britain still to this day has more influence over Greece than America. Because while we
I
lost
see.
in Italy, we won in Greece. That's good old Churchill for you. But the fucking evil pig. But the US now. Oh, well, I mean, the US in World War II as well. I should mention that quickly. The US in World War II tried to, they successfully got the Nazis to fight East and West. Uh, it helps depower the empires that they want to take over, and it helps um, try and get rid of the Soviet Union. Nearly did an American then and called them Soviet Russia. But we've had to do that over here too. But now the US has been trying to goad Russia into a world war for a while.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton, the whole point of her election was to get the Russians in a position where they either start a war or back off. That was the whole point of the no-fly zone over Syria. What they're trying to do is get Russia to strike in a way where the US can unrelentingly go to war, and they needed them to do that fucking 7 years ago, maybe longer now. And they've been trying and trying and trying. That's why Clinton wanted to win over Obama because she wanted it even sooner than Obama wanted it. Mind you, Obama and Clinton are of the same faction of the Democrats. Might be a bit important. They're both Biden Clintonites. Dick Clinton, not fucking cunt Clinton. But the Bill Clinton and Joe Biden started based off of Blair and Anthony Giddens' ideas around the third way. Mainly Anthony Giddens, which was he was a third positionist labor sociologist, as in the Labour Party for those that ain't in the UK. And you know, so Obama is actually a part of the third positionist, third way Democrats, the corporatists, as some people have come to nickname them, which they are. That some some sources like Britannica try and say that the third way rejects corporatism, and no, it doesn't. I mean, maybe in like the first world, but that's because they haven't implemented it yet. And to say that that means that they hate corporatism, no. I mean, if you've already got the power, why do you need to play the game of actually organizing workers into functional or defunct syndicates? I mean, it would buy them off easier. It would get them to riot less. But the way that a bourgeois politician thinks, I already have the power. That's their mentality. So all they have to do is try and retain it, not increase their bravado. They may change their step now. Trump shows that the petty bourgeoisie in America are willing to coup the government. They need to prevent that. So, you're going to see more corporatist reforms going on, but people need to be careful not to confuse corporatism with corporatocracy. Corporatocracy is where corporations rule the government. Corporatism is where the society is organized into nationalist syndicates, and those syndicates are class collaboratory in their efforts, or in some cases, because the capitalists don't like being in syndicates with workers, they're duopoly syndicates that organize into a mass amount of syndicates, and the workers are in one syndicate, the capitalists in another, and all industries must operate in pairs. That's corporatism. It has nothing to do with like a private property corporation. It's to do with the Christian term corporation, or even an easy one for you, congregationalism. And yeah, Oswald Mosley sums it up in an easy way to understand it. The way capitalism is, and especially is seen by its operatives, is collectivized individualism. We're on the brink of World War, and someone who wants to be Mussolini's successor, that's living up to the words Mussolini said 3 months before his death, where he talked about a re-rise and how the end of his life ain't going to be the end of the fascist movement, rah, rah, rah. She's living up to those words, and she's in power. I think Europe needs to be on a wise watch for fascisms in their own regions. You know, Italy have got an eye on their own fascists, and we should document these things. But this comes into blows as to, okay, well, maybe we need to talk a little more about the fascists from our own yard because these people are pushing up hard. Zinovia died. So like Knights Templar International, and they're centered in the UK, and I need to do some coverage on them. They're fucked. They're crazy people, and they're organizing fucking what's it, Christian terrorism to fight against the quote oncoming war of Islam or end quote against Islam. Sorry, fuck. He believes in the Great Replacement theory, and he's not just anti-Semitic towards Arabs; he's anti-Semitic towards Jews because you know that always spices things up and gets you very comfortable, right? You know, guy likes mass murder.
Jeez.
Apparently, he gave military style equipment to Serbia, and it shows a picture of it, and it's like a lot of bulletproof vests, walkie-talkies, like that, and then these like pauldrons with Templar crosses on them.
Jeez.
Trust. I'm like, fuck. Someone needs to shoot this man.
Well, with this latest victory in Italy, we are seeing the fascism becoming more and more open. And I know this is cliche for us to say this, but to be honest here, the Panthers wrote about this in the 60s, and it's frustrating that people are decades behind the Panthers. They knew fascism was already here, and I'm getting sick and tired of libtard like Chris Hedges basically saying fascism has returned. No, it hasn't
Okay,
returned. It's always been here.
it is a bit more complicated than that because there was an attempt of liberalism. Neoliberalism is different to fascism. It's just everyone thinks neoliberalism lasted from like the early 80s or 77 here. We got a little head start. From the early 80s until like the mid 2000s, which is like no, more like the early 80s to the early 90s. I mean, so Giddens' third way was it was born in 1987. Blair's third way and third positionist ideas come about in 91. And they were in the Labour Party for a good fucking 5 years before then anyway. Like the Labour Party has been a hotbed for these ideas. And then you've got Clinton picks it up in 93. Blair's election in 97. Clinton was elected in 93 as well, if I remember rightly. And so that was the move to fascism, the third way. Now, was it a very effective move to fascism? That's to be seen. They have effectively suppressed people, though. You can't disagree with that. I mean, fucking hell, they duped y'all with Bernie Sanders twice. Like, it was already obvious he was a tool of the Democrats, like, literally working for them when they gave him shit to back down. It's not like they just fucking stole votes and told him to go fuck himself in the ass. They fucking bought him off, and everyone's like, oh, they sabotaged him. He agreed to it. And then he got fucking backed out the second time because of how much backlash they got last time and was hoping maybe he'd cop more of it. Which he kind of did, but no, they still fucking were like, the Democrats are pushing him out. Like, no, this is a strategy. When he went to fucking march on Wall Street, which seems all fucking innocent at first, Obama comes on to do a speech at the exact same time to go on about how great fucking voting is and how there's great examples of Democrats out there, guys. Look at Bernie Sanders. He's a shining example of a good Democrat. They were literally just trying to get people to vote more because it doesn't matter who you vote for, so long as there's a high voter turnout, because it makes the democracy justifiable, even if it's a sham. What? You got a problem with the leader? But most people voted for them. But in America, it's like, yeah, nobody really voted for you, other than like, well, I think it's like one of the highest turnouts recently, and it was still only like 50-60%. It's like, fuck
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, in California, our primary had like 18%, despite having mail balloting.
Honestly, when it comes to voting, it really means nothing. And I know there's a cliche to say that because if you're in a state that's I'm not advocate for voting, but I just use it as an example. If you vote Republican in California, you're just throwing your vote away. You might as well not vote at all if you are Republican in California.
Well, that depends north or south, really, doesn't it? You know, South California is a bit different to North California. You guys have like a North England, South England thing going on over there. I wonder how you guys are going to balkanize California.
Actually,
it'll probably happen.
Speaking of balkanization, there's been a few times in the past 10 years where there's people that have been trying to sign petitions to split California into three to four states.
Right.
It is a huge state, and it has a lot of power. Like, and its economic power isn't just because of the cities that manage international finance there. Like, there is a lot of resources in California that allow it to be so rich. Big agricultural industry, especially.
I doubt it will be balkanized as long as the United States exists.
No, but it might not stay as California, because most state names will most likely stay post America. A lot of natives are tied to the states they're in culturally. Like, you know, I mean, you grow up in a place with 300 years of fucking. Sorry, goes longer than that. What was it, like 1400s that we first got there? Fucking 600 years of genocide. You do somewhat go accustomed to at least the locale and some of its cultural aspects, especially given when you have those cultural aspects yourself and recognize where they're stolen from. You kind of want to reclaim them. So it wouldn't surprise me if things like California and other places, especially like somewhere like Tuscan or anywhere that has a very Turtle Island-esque or inspired name. But I could see California balkanized. Either balkanized or united into a super state with actual South California. So you guys only have North and Central California. South California is in Mexico, baby.
Well, that's where I live. I live in the South.
No, you're in America. You're in the center of California.
Technically the center, but I still, if we're going technically,
yeah, it says SC on your fucking letters. Like, I know.
I technically live in the South if we're going officially, but you're not. But you're right. I am more closer to the center because of
a lot of famous metal bands started up near where you're at. Like,
oh god. I don't want to rant about Orange County because I hate this fucking place that I live. I know I've ranted about it I think too many times already.
Do you know what's quite an interesting thing about a lot of the metal bands that started up in Orange County? They hated it there. Like, so thrash metal, when it was starting up there, was at the time glam was really popular. And so the whole nickname for glam was, now this is the 80s, gay LA metal. Now, my problem with glam isn't it's gay. My problem with glam is it's posers, and that's was their problem. But they synonymized being posers and being effeminate with being gay, and that's fucking homophobic. But that's what they used to call them, gay LA metal. And so all these other metalheads just wanted to escape, because fucking they saw it as a poser culture and a poser community. So like, fuck, gotta get away from Poser Town. And it seems nothing's changed. It's still a poser town. It's less homophobic nowadays, but it's still a poser. It's still a poser town. Why am I rolling a fucking roach? I've already got one in my fucking Rizzler. Gormless tosser.
Orange County is extremely reactionary. This is someone that's lived here for over 30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more reactionary than San Diego.
It's fact. I'd argue it's gotten more reactionary since 2016.
Yeah, I agree.
Trump, 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 Trump.
I mean, just recently, the San Diego County, like City Hall or whatever, council had they apologized for some declaration they signed in 1941, calling for rounding up all Japanese Americans into internment camps. So it's like, wow.
Oh, Bella Joe, Bella Joe, Bella Joe, Joe.
What's really frustrating about California also is just how ignorant the fucking people are and how petty bourgeois the mindset of majority of the people that live here.
Absolutely.
Like you could talk about fascism and how it's connected to like class, and they'll fucking look at you like you're crazy.
California is still segregated, but they don't do it by law, 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 law.
It's like, okay, one thing I think people seem to be ignoring, and I think we need to bring this up. Mussoliniite fascism. It is far more dangerous than people are willing to admit and hype up Hitlerite fascism too much in terms of its threat level.
Well, to be honest, it's actually kind of both. They don't hype. So they're in their hyping up. They actually underestimate both kind of fascists because a lot of first world people like to think of fascists and Nazis as just morons. Like, oh, they don't believe what we believe, so they must be morons. Like, as if someone just told them wrong facts, and now, oh no, I'm a bad guy. That's not how it works. Like, yeah, some people are Nazis because they're ignorant. It doesn't make it so for everyone, and even if it is because they're ignorant, them learning a fact all of a sudden isn't going to make them go, oh shit, I didn't want to really be a Nazi, guys, and then change their mind. Like, you've got to try and convince them that their horrible shit isn't justified. Even with people that have and I mean this in the white sense of the word, like this common decency that people will find with these people, even people that are somewhat decent and respective to speak to, like they don't scream at you or lose their rag or say they want to round you up into a camp, although they probably do. That person is the way that they see it. They see all of their horrible shit as justified evil. That's the best you'll get out of a fascist. So even if there's some form of decency or common ground you could find with them, you need to be so prepared to convince someone that their ideas ain't gonna save the world no matter how much supposed sacrifices they think they're making. When really, the only reason they see it as a sacrifice, a lot of these people, is because their own decency is having to be thrown into question because of the horrible shit they're doing. It's so self-centered and individualistic. It's two different worldviews. Fascism is individual and idealistic, and we're collective. Well, actually, it's a bit of a hard one to pointy because the fascists believe they're collectivized individualists, but they're still individualists. Don't get fooled on that. They're collectivized individuals. We're communal people who are collectivized. That's the communist movement, and we're about materialism, not idealism.
Well, I'm not saying that Nazis are dangerous. I just feel like, from my experience in the past almost 2 years of of dealing with these fascists, Mussoliniite fascists are far more more well-read than Hitlerite fascists. And I think I'm far more.
There's more to the Nazis than Hitler.
I know there is. I'm not saying that Mussoliniite fascists and Hitlerite don't overlap in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that, but based on my experience of dealing with them, I think Hitlerite fascists are far more. Not Hitlerite fascists.
I'm just getting into the problem that exists in the whole Marxist movement. So
I just stumbled about I was just saying that culture thug. Let's be honest. Culture thug is even though I don't know much about him, what I've seen from him and heard from him, he is well read on the stuff that he talks about. And the
You
way
get
he
him drunk enough, he'll start saying anti-Semitic shit.
and the way he presents himself, like, let's be honest, if you compare culture thug, I'm using it as an example to what's to say, Stefan Montague. Stefan Montague comes off as a dumbass by comparison. Not saying he is a dumbass.
I disagree, but you know, Stefan Molyneux just knows his audience. Like over in Europe, it's a little easier to push things like fucking. Well, to be fair, in America, it's just as easy to push eugenics as over here, but to push Nazism, a little easier over here in certain places. One place that you could push Nazism quite easily is Scandinavia. Scandinavia, it sells like fucking hotcakes, especially Sweden. Sweden and Finland. Finland and Sweden are very big hotbeds for fascism. But what I was getting at, well, I'll finish my point, is that fascists aren't there alone in its isolation, ignorance, as a lot of Marxists like to believe. It's ignorance compiled with a worldview that has been constructed around them either by their experiences, well, actually, it's not really exclusive, so I shouldn't say either, by both their experiences as an individual and by the influences, those who have brought them up and taught them and abused them or anything in their life that's gone down, has helped constructed a terrible worldview around themselves. So a lot of people need to not go around that angle, because a lot of people who go around that angle with fascists, where they think they're like, it's alone ignorance that is the problem, and not the fact that ignorance, that torment that they've gone in life, or lack thereof torment that's allowed them to be an opportunistic, chauvinist little dickhead. That's a problem there. No, the Nazis were not dumbasses, Logan. The Nazis were fucking our intellectual enemies. They know Marxism better than anyone. Well, fascists in general. They know Marxism better than any of our enemies. Any of our enemies. Liberals don't care to read that shit.
I mean, like Hitler, like he talked about how he destroyed Marxists when he debated them in his Mein Kampf book. It's like Hitler was not a stupid man. He wasn't. That's something that liberals like want to make people believe. People don't want, because Hitler is a monster. But what makes Hitler so terrifying is he actually
very intelligent.
He was very intelligent, and he went through some extreme trauma.
Well, when I was growing up, being physically abused, it was easy for me to get caught up with Hitlerism.
Like Hitler, for a lot of people who've been abused, is easy to relate to him because he was abused by his father. And what do you know? People that were abused by their father are going to gravitate to Hitler.
Well, I mean, it gave me feelings of grandiose. Like I wanted to kill my old man when I was a Hitlerite. We get along really well now.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like we can't like dismiss the humanity of anyone, including our enemies. Like Hitler, what makes him terrifying is he was a human being, and we have to recognize that fact.
It's more so that, like, if one's to underestimate the intelligence of the Nazis, then they're obviously going to underestimate the intelligence of fascists. Now, like, let's put an example. Like, Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, Hans Göring, Himmler, Hess. These people are big ideologues of fascism that a lot of people look to. But while they're somewhat dangerous, there is the only brand of Nazism that you're going to see survive today comes from your boy Strasser. So that's why I am somewhat more on the Nazi thing, because there is a form of Nazism that's very popular today and that doesn't set off alarm bells as much as everything else, and that's Strasserism, because the West has purveyed the myth that Strasser was a rebel against Hitler.
Yeah, not to mention
Right.
he's labeled as, as the good guy in history, like someone that got betrayed by Hitler.
That's that about the Black Legions.
Oh, speaking of Strasser, they barely talk about him in Hitler's biographies. At least the ones I've read.
I mean, they will typically talk about him during the night of the long knives, but otherwise they won't speak about the Strasser brothers. There's
Well,
two of
the
them.
reason they don't want to because one of them basically became my MI6 agent, the one that survived.
Yeah,
So you know,
Otto
but
Strasser.
yeah, it's like the same thing with Bandera. You know, after World War II, Bandera just becomes another Cold War Western asset.
Well, I mean, Mussolini was an MI6 asset during World War One to help push Italy into World War, and Hitler was an MI6 asset during the 20s to help arm Germany to go to war against the Soviet Union.
Right.
So Russia and EU and America and Ukraine and everything has the seal of the British and the Americans written all over it. They do this all the time. So does the EU, to be fair. I ain't gonna fucking make them sound like the victims here, because
Right.
they're not. But, you know, this is very much in the ballpark of, I guess, what the Germans would call British piracy.
Yeah, I was trying
I
to say
don't
like the
like
whole
comparing the British to
pipeline.
pirates because the pirates were pretty dope and had a pretty neat code that made everyone, well, for those who followed the code, everyone on the ship was supposed to be treated like equals and they all looked out for each other. And the whole point of getting booty was so everyone had an even share of the loot. It's some pretty fucking commie shit, I ain't gonna lie. The commie pirates are gonna come and steal your fucking, I don't know, steal your shoes. We could take
Now,
the yacht, but yachts are pretty fucking cringe, and we don't want to.
somebody
We don't want to lose cred at the fucking sell stolen boats fucking
sound
fair.
it sounds
Turn
like
up having a yacht and get someone else robbed you.
Actually,
sounds like ultra leftism there.
this is something I love.
Pirate communists as ultra
Pirate
left.
communists.
You know what? This
Fucking Stalin was a train pirate.
this is real. This is actually a good point to discuss because the transphobia that's currently going on right now. I've already said this multiple times. It's fucking scary, just how openly transphobic it seems like the West has become, and only in a few years.
Do you know they passed a law in the UK that essentially makes any protest? I don't think it's completely been signed into law yet, but it has been passed by the Commons. And I think it's been passed by the Lords. I think it just needs to be signed in by the Regent, the King. What's it? It basically makes any protest that's like loud a violation of British law, and it makes what's it? Oh, what was the other part of it? The other part's terrible. Oh shit! There's another part of the law, and it's really important, and I need to not leave it out. Making loudness of protests a problem. Oh fuck! Some pretty fucking racist shit in it. They're targeting Irish travelers and Romani with it and all that. There's another part of it that's really fucked up. But yeah, no, the British government is trying to make it so that you can't actively protest and operate, and that the police have a greater yield to deal with people. And they're trying to stop LGBT protests. They're trying to stop Black Lives Matter protests from occurring in the UK because apparently that's terrified the fuck out of the establishment. Well, they've actually been trying to get this law in since mid 2010s. the LGBT protests around 2013, 2014 already got him a bit shook.
No.
Jesus, Turf Island is more. In a lot of ways, is more fascist than America is.
I mean, we both come from the same cookie jar. I mean, you win some, you lose some.
Well, you want another thing? Even though I
That's not
know
even the right slogan
I know
to say, though.
I don't think any of us want to talk about Joanne, so I'm not only going to mention her briefly. But Joanne, by the way, that's J.K. Rowling's real name.
Joker Rowling died fucking tasing herself in the balls.
Like Joanne did something. Basically, was doing a hit piece on a charity because they were helping trans kids.
Joanne is tied to the hip of a baroness who is like she's the queen bitch of anti-LGBT shit. And like she voted against the Gay Marriage Act. She fucking she said, and on the basis of it would of protecting what it means to be a woman or a girl, some shit like that, like saying that like the gays will devalue womanhood, and it's like, does she not know that women can also be gay? Like,
sounds a lot like fucking Paul Cockshot. He's over here talking about allying with quote radical feminists unquote against fucking trans people.
Have you noticed one thing?
It's another set of quotes for the word radical.
Yeah.
Have you noticed all these?
I mean, like, what kind of radical? It's like the red pill. It's like, okay, but did you go right or did you go left when you woke up?
One thing all these TERFs all have in common? They hate non-white women.
Yeah, they do.
Like,
bro, they hate white women too, but they hate non-white women more. So when like ever like non-white women are being targeted more, they just cry about white women. And it's like, okay.
Well,
who the fuck is being affected by this more? Like, yeah, we've got to cry about all women. But that, once again, if you start saying shit like that, that's all lives matter level stuff, in my opinion. It's like, yeah,
Right.
no shit. No one's turning around and saying, "Oh, we've got to care about black women." I mean, oh no, fuck white women all of a sudden. It don't work like that. That's people looking for an excuse to downplay an issue, and they have none. So they're like, "Fuck, we can't just scream like we normally would. It doesn't help us." Okay. We'll turn around and go, yeah, but if you wanted to help women, why are you abandoning white women? And it's like, bruh, like, do they not understand how like white women do cause a lot of harm for black women in America and in Europe, and also you have the problem of black women don't go around getting in relationships with white men to oppress them like they're a slave. White women and white men going to get into relationships with black men and black women to treat them like slaves. You think I'm just saying fucking rad shit that's crazy? Go fucking speak with black radicals who have had fucking decades in the community and ask them about what I'm going on about, and they'll tell you just as well as I have with the manipulative mannerisms of multiracial. I don't like that term because race is a class structural thing. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Ethnicities would be a better term that makes me fucking feel less dirty in saying it, because I don't like fucking saying like races. I find it quite offensive. Racism and racial structures in society exist, but I don't like personalizing it on people. But yeah, multiracial relationships, it always ends up becoming always, fuck's sakes, use an absolutist language. It very commonly becomes a colonial relationship, and even in the ones who aren't seeking for that to occur, it's still possible to happen. As a lot of people have talked about in better words than I can word it, in capitalist societies, a lot of people do a horrible shit on autopilot. Liberals are some of the worst for this. where they're so used to everyone being horrible to each other. It's not that they're not like conscious of what they're doing. They are, but that seems like the norm to them, and because they don't question anything, they don't have a critical thought in their fucking life. They live by that thing. So it's not like I'm just talking about, because a lot of people think that when I say that it's most common, oh, you just think white people, all a bunch of evil-minded people that are going to hurt people. No. It's about whiteness itself being a cultural archetype for this kind of oppression, and as to why we need to disown whiteness. And when I hear people then go and like get icky when I try and, you know, move towards those positions now, and are working with other people I know who are Europeans and need to de-white themselves, and speaking with black people to learn about more problems that I can't see myself, because A, I'm fucking white, and B, I'm fucking all the way over in Europe, where while we did have the slave trade and while we do have a multi-ethnic community, it is much more extreme, the veracity of it in America, because we don't have black people being shot in the tens every day and in the hundreds every week. So it's like, it is a little more complicated, obviously, and I need to learn these things from all these different angles. But, you know, there's some people who will agree with me that whiteness needs to go, but they will scoff at the idea of de-whiting and moving towards a abolishment of whiteness today. Like, why not start now? It's a very, so first you've got to be personal about it. You've got to attain to what your issues are, which you have to interact with others to do so. No one knows everything, so you cannot learn it alone from yourself. You do need to look into yourself, because like, you're not immune. You haven't read Marx and then, oh, I'm no longer a racist. Don't work that way. And then obviously it's about teaching other people and showing other people the way. Like, you know, if you go, oh, but it's only one person here, one person there. Yeah, but there's fucking hundreds of thousands of fucking millions of us that are fucking Marxists. If everyone was doing every now and then, people was getting out there and about there and just engaging, you're moving more people forward. It's why, like, you know, we should be doing aid projects, not just because it helps people, because you can teach people a new way, especially to the people you're aiding, who might be more interested in Marxism than all of the fucking Primrose dickheads that have all the things brought out for them. To be honest, I don't think anyone holding on to their whiteness is going to go and attain to the lumpen proletariat. They're going to stay away from them. They see white lumpen proles as white trash and fucking attempt to de-white us for us because they don't want any association with us. And then, and they all call us wannabe black. That's always a common thing as well. And then you've got like black lumpen. Well, that's self-explanatory as to why these white middle class people who don't want to drop their whiteness, who call themselves communists, don't want to go anywhere near us. Race is just another form of class, and that, you know, so the lumpen proletariat has been tied to blackness. Yet these same Marxists will get pissy when you point out that the lumpen proletariat is mostly black, and that black people in the proletariat are mostly lumpen. It's not a fucking hard thing to understand or accept. So I don't know why I have to fucking whack my cock off a moving train to get people to realize it.
Can we all agree that white supremacist feminism is not feminism?
It's fucking third wave feminism before the first wave even finished.
It's a pretty fitting name too, you know, third wave feminism.
There's only.
Do you know it's actually a by chance thing, like how the Nazis fell on the third position was that there was already liberalism and socialism. But funnily enough, this is what it shows: it's by chance. Liberalism is actually the second position.
It really is. Like,
rated on progressivity.
There's only one kind of feminism that's acceptable: socialist
proletarian feminism.
Yeah.
Sorry, I speak a lot with Maoist on it, so I didn't even let you finish the sentence. I'm like, proletarian feminism. Fucking love this shit.
Proletarian feminism, yeah, it's the only kind of feminism that's acceptable because it is truly for emancipating all women.
Yeah.
Well, men too. Feminism from its inception was about women and men. It's just men aren't like put in a position where fucking, if they step out, they're gonna be crushed, raped, kidnapped, all these horrible things that were happening. When women stood up, fucking, that was the initial response. Okay, the perception that men have of women is that men are more capable of violence, so their initial response was violence, and that just encourages them to be put down and held out. But feminists, even in this position where they're being persecuted by men, turned around and still looked at our struggles and was like, yeah, no, this is slavery in both mannerisms of the word. We're fucking birth slaves. They're fucking factory slaves. And actually, if you go back into the 1800s and into the early 1900s, it wasn't until like post World War One they started pushing women out of the workspace again. You still had specifically women jobs and specifically men jobs, but like, in the 1800s, women were factory workers. Like, it's not World War One and World War Two that changed that. If anything, World War One, after the aftermath, reinforced prejudices. Men started to act like women were encroaching on their space, and that the reason was because of that was because of the suffragettes movement that started in the UK. I hear that when the suffragettes came over to the US, they were fucking racist as fuck.
Yeah. He kind of writes about it. Harry Haywood about early feminists in like the late 1910s, throughout the 1920s. Is that a lot of the mainstream feminist movement completely refused to protest against lynchings going on in the South against Black people, and that was one of Harry Haywood's big problems with the feminist movement, because on the other side of the issue there, all the Black people were fully in line with giving more rights to women, but a lot of the leaders of the feminist movement weren't giving that same love back to the other side.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy. And there's always this like privilege going on with this bourgeois feminist crap, where I mean, they do the same type of shit too. Where like, I do notice it like more like modern, this like third wave feminist shit, I guess, whatever we call it. They're going back to that shit where they're trying to say like they're trying to. It's like a fake empowerment type of thing. Like they just want them to be good consumerists in like the capitalist society, where they're like, you guys, you don't need a man or whatever the fuck. Like you guys just you guys can be girl boss CEOs and shit. Like they're trying to push this like petty bourgeois utopia to like women now.
Well, to quote a famous English feminist, feminism is not about you don't beat patriarchy with matriarchy. Patriarchy is beaten with fraternity.
Based.
Is it me, or it seems like these women they have such contempt for the working class? Like, it's so disgusting how they view the working class.
Like, there's all the sex pigs and fucking like rapists and murderers and other shit like that. And they at the end of the day, third wave feminists are male chauvinists. It sounds kind of weird, but let's be real. Like, yeah, they are women. They are being women chauvinists, but they are defending toxic masculinity.
They are
or toxic femininity, which only ever works to empower toxic masculinity further. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, you know what's crazy too is I remember seeing a study probably like 2 months ago or something by now, but I was very interesting, and it kind of confirmed the thought that I already kind of had, where they were doing like polls or whatever on various different types of women and who their dating preferences were. And an interesting thing that I saw was that the white women in particular were much more likely to not want to be with a man if she made more money than him. And it was typically like Black women who were the opposite, where it didn't really matter that much at all whether she made more than him or not. So, like, it's like this bourgeois feminist bullshit that's especially prominent among white women, where they're pushing this bullshit fucking male chauvinist crap, or like, oh, I have to date a man that makes way more than me. Like, she actually wants to be in that position, you know, that fucking position where a woman is basically at the mercy of her husband.
And the third wave feminists, they want a society that is like hard locked into fascism, because you've got like two types of bourgeois feminism. Just outright bourgeois liberal feminism of the 60s up until still exists today. It's just no one really gives a fuck. Because that's their mentality. They're like, well, yeah, we got some rights. There's still some problems, but democracy will shape it out eventually. That's liberal feminism. Yeah, it's as disappointing as liberalism. The third wave is I mean, liberal feminism is still very much more prominent amongst the petty bourgeoisie than the bourgeoisie, which, I mean, it's stones to boulders, but they're all still rocks. But you know, because the petty bourgeoisie are the cultural sort of they're the dominant cultural sector of the upper class, the ones who control all the means of discourse and actually understand humanity to some degree. They're pushing the bucket a bit on that one. They kind of have a somewhat grasp on what being human is. The bourgeoisie are like fucking robots these days. But the actually, robot probably isn't a good synergy, because robots are normally controlled. Androids. They're like androids. Really badly programmed androids that fucking just about pass as sentient.
What about drones?
Profit is all I think about. But third wave feminism is even more distinctly petty bourgeois. It's very centered around the rise of fascism in the early 90s in Europe. Institutionalized fascism, I do mean specifically. You get fascism that comes in coups, you get fascism that comes in elections. This is an elected fascist moment with people like Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, etc. Well, third wave feminism interestingly rose up in around 96, 97. So it fits perfectly in the timeline of the rise of the third wave.
I love that you brought up the Clintons, because it's very relevant considering Hillary Clinton just like endorsed fucking, what was her name, Georgia Maloney, whatever.
Wait, did
well,
she? Oh
yeah, she
shit!
He did.
Yeah, she said like it's a good thing that more women leaders are coming to power.
Well, she actually is a third wave feminist. Like, she was a third wave feminist in the 90s and was attacked for being a quote rad femme in the 90s and the early 2000s by the Republicans.
Yeah, keep in mind she was a Goldwater girl too in the 60s. She literally opposed the Civil Rights Act. She was in favor of Barry Goldwater, racist douchebag from my state of Arizona.
Barry
Is
Goldwater.
Goldwater still alive, or is he finally dead?
He died a long time ago. Barry Goldwater wanted to like nuke North Vietnam or some crazy crap like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just living up to fucking Sunglasses Man from World War II who wanted to bomb fucking North Korea with nukes.
Right.
MacArthur.
Yeah.
He went crazy in his later years, like literal fucking batshit insane. Like, we're talking Hitler post 1943 levels of fucking
Oh, don't forget Patton, who wanted to invade the Soviet Union.
Well, yeah, that might have also been Churchill's fault.
I see.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Churchill was trying to goad the US into fighting the Soviets with them.
Yeah, definitely would not doubt that.
Operation Unthinkable. Because the Soviets would least expect it.
So
that's the crazy shit too. Is like, if it wasn't for World War II, like Churchill would be looked at as, oh my god, I can't even imagine how different.
Bro, he was hated in the 40s.
Yeah,
like, he tried to run for election again, and because he was opposed to universal healthcare, they told him to go fuck himself and voted for Labour.
Yeah, dude was literally overlooking the fucking Bengal famine.
Also, if they knew that, like, not only was the Bengal famine caused by the need to stock up food to take over Europe, which, to be honest, that's a splitting one because, I mean, middle class people won't give a shit. They'll be like, well, he's helping them. Stop complaining. But because he also starved them to do it, it's a little different then. Of course, the middle class who were not as affected by it. I mean, just like World War One, the middle class got to basically live their lives fine. Like that's how both World Wars went. The middle class were doing fine. World War One caused revolutions because of this. The attempted English Revolution and the revolutions in Ireland were so easy to happen in the British Empire because in Britain and even its aristocracy in Ireland were living luxury while the people were in poverty and they were being forced to go fight a war.
Yeah.
Like literal luxury. You would thought a war wasn't going on.
Yeah,
No
didn't-
different with World War II
fucking,
because they were getting bombed. But in America, the American aristocracy weren't touched.
Yeah, like fucking. I always hear that Churchill said that like he blamed the fucking Indians for the famine. He basically said like they were breeding like rabbits or some shit, and that's why
They're breeding like rabbits. They're half humans that are incapable of growing crops, even though we rely on them for our crops. So that's obviously bullshit. And what was the other one he said? He said something along the lines that they deserve to die more than that they deserve to actually have our food. Or something like that. Is fucking. I can't remember the wording of it. But it was fucking crazy.
Well,
reminds me of that audio footage or audio fucking of Nixon when he was also dehumanizing Indian people, specifically Indian women.
actually, what he said is, and I hate Indians. I hate them. They're a beastly people with a beastly religion.
Was that
That's
Nixon?
Churchill, yeah.
That was Churchill.
That was Churchill. Okay, yeah. It's kind of hard to tell because all these racist idiots say similar shit. I think
Right.
that's
In 1919, Churchill turns around and said, the Irish are peculiar. They refuse to be English. Oh, no, that was it. The problem with the Irish is that they refuse to be English.
Oh, jeez.
Or was it accept that they're English? I can't remember which one it was, but it was racist either way.
God.
Churchill was a genocidal monster, yet he's hailed as a hero.
For real.
Also, Logan, next time you listen to Anarchy in the UK, I'll give you some food for thought when you're listening to it. It's actually about anarchists supposedly being completely useless because they have no direction, which is a problem for some anarchists, well, most anarchists. I like anarcho-communists because typically they use Marxian dialectics and, so it's like, yeah, baby, we got some dialectical materialists. Come on in the camp. We're going to teach you as to why you need to have a state for a bit and fucking... after a few dialectical discussions, we'll get on as to whether we can work together or we'll already hate each other before you've left. And
You know what's weird about that? I feel like it's been forever since I've even met an ANCOM, like a literal ANCOM.
they're not typically online.
Yeah, that must be it, 'cause
Especially the active ones. The active ones, they go back to brick phones a lot of times. Like, I mean, I use a brick phone. I have a smartphone, but it don't have a functional SIM in it.
Mm.
It did, and now I'm on a brick phone again. I mean, eventually, at the end of the day, every Marxist needs to know how to go dark, and everyone is so terminally online. I don't think anyone could do it for more than a few days.
Yeah, like the people I see online and shit for anarchists, like they're always like anarcho-syndicalists or fucking. I've seen some anarcho-nihilists lately. I'm like, Jesus.
Oh,
Every
what
time I hear
hell
the
is
word
that?
syndicalist, I take a gasp. It's like when you hear an English person say the word Volk and you're like at the end of your seat, like especially with an E on the end. It's like, oh no, 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 no. What's going on here? Is he about to say Volkergemeinschaft?
Yeah, it's funny. I was curious earlier, like how many times do they mention Volk in the National Bolshevist Manifesto? And I checked it, and it's 148 times it's mentioned.
Jeez.
Can we? I'd like to get back to the thing we were talking about the very early in the stream regarding, like, where does where does Europe go from here after this crazy
More
lady?
fascism. That's where it's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it's going for sure.
Like I've seen some other shit. Like where else is this type of shit going on?
Oh,
Sweden,
it's not.
fucking
It's yeah, it's
or Norway or
Sweden,
something like that.
but like if you want to go in the center of it, like it's like 20
Hungary's
years
already
ago.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, Orban is racist. You know, he's basically like a Hungarian wannabe Nazi. You know, recently he was out there saying like
Yeah,
some
Lukashenko's out there too. So
yeah, but Orban was like, "Oh, I'm against like race mixing or something like that, some crazy crap like that."
yeah,
So
he's
you
against
know,
race mixing. Yeah.
Well, maybe
yeah,
a question.
Lukashenko, he's not a guys. He doesn't call himself a Nazi. It's a Nazball. Checkmate.
Okay, the question I have is, how do you think this is going to affect the midterms and the election in 2024?
Midterms
I
for
mean,
where? For here in the U.S.
For the states, I'm talking about the
Oh.
states.
Oh, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't. I mean,
I mean,
it-
before I would have said like it's 100% gonna be like just a Republican fucking wave or whatever the
Speaking
fuck
of
they call
which,
it. But
I think we should before there's a topic I really want to get to, and that's Iran, because I feel like that's a topic we should be
Yeah, I need
discussing.
to do a stream on that. Gengar else is off this week, so I'm gonna fucking pester him in the daytime. Like, oh yeah,
Alright.
dickhead. It's like 12 a.m. Come on, you're up. Let's go. And it'll be like fucking 8 a.m. for him, and he's just walking.
yeah,
All right. Personally, I can't say who's going to win the midterm. I don't think because
yeah,
I don't
know.
think it's gonna. I do not think it's gonna be a landslide victory for the Republicans.
Well,
Actually,
the
Yeah,
thing is,
I think Bernie. I think Biden is winning over the Bernie-crats.
Yeah, he is because they're all pushing this like dark Brandon bullshit, whatever. Like,
well,
yeah,
Done what?
I personally
Yeah,
see this.
yeah.
I personally see the midterms being close. I
yeah.
don't.
Well, the thing is, the Democrats lose if it's close, anyways. Even just with one house flipping or whatever.
They're
So-
leading all the houses at the moment, if I remember rightly, aren't they?
Yeah,
Okay,
for
the
now,
Roe v.
but-
Wade thing, they were getting crushed in the polls, but the Roe v. Wade thing really flipped it around.
Can we,
So
can,
now
can we
it's
be
close.
honest?
I
know,
think they wanted it to go overturned for that reason because
Yeah,
what's
they-
it?
absolutely. What
What's her
happened.
name? The crack baroness herself, fucking Nancy Pelosi. There we go. I have to remember the fact that she fucking exists just because they've put her on a crack drip. But
Yeah.
fucking Nancy Pelosi did a fucking Freudian slip. What was it, like 2-3 years ago now? It was during the 2020 elections when she Freudian slipped and was like, "They're never going to overturn it," and like, it's just a polemic point of engagement, and it's like, yeah, sure.
She had another stupid ass speech where she's like, "We need a strong Republican Party. What happened to the
Yeah.
old Republican Party? Where it's strong?" I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Why are you advocating for a
It's
stronger
funny because-
opposition party, so-called opposition?"
Trump was a Democrat in Republican clothing. He was a rhino, even though like his whole thing was
There's
supposedly
literally-
not being a rhino.
There's literally footage of Trump. I think it's in the 90s, if not early 2000s.
97, and he said it again in 2003.
Yeah, he said like he was a Democrat at the time, and he even admitted that he thinks the economy does a lot better under Democrats than Republicans.
He
That's
said
his
as well
own
that like the Democrats don't like him in a lot of places though, and because they said that they wouldn't want him to run with them, so he said if he would run otherwise and he can't run as a Democrat, he'd run as a Republican because they're thick as shit and you can convince them of anything.
Yeah.
Well, Trump actually.
Trump's
said,
not a moron. Everyone thinks Trump's just some idiot. No, he's fucking playing. He's a fool.
No, no.
He's not a massively intelligent guy, but he's playing these geezers as a fool. He just wants power.
No,
He's just
Trump
another
said-
power-hungry Democrat who really likes Hitler. He even likes Hitler down to the point where he invokes his type of style in his dress sense. He's not dressing exactly like him, but look at the way he's always going around trench-coated and gloved. Like, fucking, in a very specific, stoic way. Caleb Maupin dressed the exact same as Trump.
Well, I want to say about
There's a thing going on here, and they both both of them have the fucking haircut thing going on as well. Not the exact haircut, but that there's been a thing with fascists since fucking Hitler, but they all go with this type of swoopity swiggity style shave at the sides, or in Trump's case, go for a mullet haircut. That's always very distinct and embossing. I mean, Trump's hair is like the stereotypical American capitalist hair. When you think of an American capitalist, they look like Trump.
Guys, what I wanted to say is what Trump actually said regarding if he were to run for president. If I were to run for president, I would run as a Republican because Republicans have the dumbest group of voters, and my numbers would be terrific.
I mean, he literally mimicked that even during his campaign and shit. He was like,
no, seriously.
He was like, oh, I know. I was just saying, like, there's also footage of him saying that, like, he's trying to reach out to the people with the lowest IQ. He literally said that.
Yeah, Trump thinks his supporters are stupid. Honestly, he has nothing but contempt for them.
He does.
He's a guy who has an intellectual interest in the Nazis. Like, I think I underestimated Trump myself, but what's it? That's what happens to any of the people who are listening to Jimmy Dore's level of critique of Trump. Jimmy's the type of person who'd love Trump if he was fucking a Democrat and pushing fascism. Like, fucking, he tried to appeal to Trump on peaceful grounds, like through Tucker Carlson, and then him and Tasker Coruscant became fucking big buddies, and I guarantee they text each other. I guarantee he's got Tucker Carlson's personal number and didn't do the big funny and dox him. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Come on, man. I want Tucker Carlson's phone number. I will pay the overseas charges to ring him up and call him a fucking cuck and hang up. And then I'll do a fucking... I'll do a mecha tanky and I'll tell everyone that I BTFO'd him.
I don't see how you can go on Fox News and not be a fascist, especially Tucker Carlson's show.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go on there and make a fool of him, that's one thing. But if you're going on there just literally licking his ball sack, that's another thing.
And, it's not
maybe Jimmy just likes salt on his food.
And it's not just Jimmy, you know. It's Glenn Greenwald. It's Blumenthal. Michael Tracy.
Glenn Greenballs.
Yeah. Jackass Stinkle. And,
Can we even know
Jackass Stinkle? I like that one.
Speaking of Jackson Hinkle, I know that these people are irrelevant, but we might as well bring them up really quick. Don't you guys find it hilarious just how, like, the MAGA communist shit just imploded and how the Trump supporters and them fighting each other?
It was always going to blow up on itself. Like, what's it?
Right.
I focused too much on fucking mopping because every time someone brought something new to me, it was like, oh, this is gold, this is great. Like, and not focusing on the fact that it's like, okay, but how much do I need to prove that the guy's a fascist once I've already proved he's a fascist? Like, really, it's you know, I should only have been documenting the real in-world activities that they did, and not every fucking fascist shit that came out of the dick cheese's mouth. I didn't cover everything that come out of it. You know what I mean, though. Like, fucking no point chasing the fucking tail when you can punch the beast right in the fucking throat. But that's why I'm gonna take a no efficacy in regards to Culture Thug and just focus specifically on things that express political program, foreign policy, socio-political ideas, and points of operation. And it's even more paramount with operating with someone like Culture Thug, because those Mosleyite style fascists and Mussoliniite Strasserites, they are the most dangerous.
Yeah,
see, I wouldn't make it a target between Nazism and fascism. I'd make it more like Hitlerism specifically on an open basis, because I mean, fucking Cultured Thug is a big fan of Hitlerism, by the way. Like, he just uses coded language, and I mean, Caleb was doing the same. That's why Cultured Thug was kind of quite smug in the debate. Like, he's like, why are we not allies? And then Caleb was like that. That's why he put Cultured Thug's name, fascism, in quotations. He doesn't believe that he's actually a fascist. That's why he put Maoist rebel in quotations for Jason. Like, it's just... You know,
Caleb,
Jason would be the first person to say that like it's just a fucking nickname, like it's not because he's actually like fucking fighting in the jungle. Like he ain't saying that.
I thought it was an interesting phenomenon though in both culture thugs debates against Caleb and Haas respectively. Both of them ended up asking him near the end of each of those debates, "Why are you calling yourself a fascist? You're basically we basically align on so much."
So Caleb did it like in the middle, and do you notice after when Caleb did it, he sort of like sat there with like his hand on his chin, you know, all fucking like smug, like fucking
Yeah.
listening to him, like, what's he got to say? And like how pop culture
Right.
thugs then trying to do the Mussolini and Hitler thing and most other fascist thing. Strasser
Yeah.
was very effective at this too, of pushing that it's socialism.
Yeah, exactly what they were doing. And
I don't want to.
that's the thing is like I mean Haas and Caleb are basically on that same wavelength, so they didn't know how to
Right.
argue against it. That's
Can we-
that's the funny thing.
I don't. I'd say let's shift the focus to anti-imperialism and what it is and what it actually isn't. Because
Well, I still got to get so with fascism in Europe, it really is a unison of these ideals. Mosley was the Mussolini style fascism that survived, but Mosley was also directly influenced by Otto Spengler.
Yeah.
Strasser, Otto Spengler, no, it's Oswald Spengler, sorry.
Yeah. I was.
Oswald von Spengler, Spengly boy. He likes Spengly boy. And so does Strasser. Strasser's heavily influenced by him and his dead fascist fuck of a brother. He's dead too now, but I'm just trying to dunk on him when he came to Britain after fucking.
Right.
I'm doing a meta dunk, like, or would it be a retroactive? That's it, a retroactive dunk. This bill is retroactive. Unlike fucking any American bill where they give you any money and they didn't give you any money before. No retroactive activity there. But Strasser, Oswald Mosley, and Francis Parker Yockey, who is the Hitlerism in it. Francis Parker Yockey was a big fan of Mr. Hitler. He just didn't like the fact that Mr. Hitler, you got too distracted with the racism. It's too late for like trying to go down them lines.
Right.
The mixing is done. He didn't disagree with his positions on race. He just disagreed with like the focus on it as like the fix for society. Like well, he's still a white supremacist. Like Francis Parker Yockey and any of these people, they're all still white supremacists. They're just pushing like Europeanism and Americanism as this like multiculturalism that invites everyone in. Similarly to how white multiculturalism came from Roosevelt in the 30s, that allowed Irish and Italian people to be also classified as white, and that didn't actually get fully implemented until after World War II. And Caleb Maupin is a proponent of pushing that shit. It's like, no, multiculturalism was a fucking capitalist lie. Like, yes, multicultures can exist within a society, but every every side of the world is going to have predominantly its own culture, and then it will be influenced and developed by its own developments of its own culture from its own. And I guess in the case of social societies, proletarian culture, the cultural development, especially with the continuous cultural revolutions that will occur throughout the permanent revolution that is socialism. But I guess continuous revolution is better because permanent sounds a bit too absolute. And although I know that it's talking about the absolute nature of revolution within the period of time that is socialism, just to be extremely semantic for no necessary reason. But with you also have the outside influence of culture that comes in, but that doesn't make the society all of a sudden, okay, we're now both cultures. Like those cultures integrate in eventually, and like these mergers start to happen and occur. Like predominantly cultures will survive, and with national cultural autonomy, that actually allows the greater protection of oppressed cultures within societies, where they're not going to dissolve into these countries. That's sort of the whole point of protecting these peoples, is they're not just going to, there's a white myth in a lot of communist minds, where they seem to think everyone's gonna like a Jewish person in Europe is gonna turn fucking German eventually because of socialism. It gonna work like that. It's not how
Uh,
society rolls.
That's why I thought it was funny in that clip I posted earlier today, where fucking Culture Thug tried to like sneakily fucking throw a little anti-Semitism into his bullshit, where he was like, "Oh yeah, like as our aspect of our fascism is that it's a cold masculinity, which directly goes against modernity, so we're anti-modernity, but fucking Semitism."
Semitism and modernity are the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, and then he said Semitism and modernity are the same thing. Therefore, if we're anti-modernity, we are therefore also anti-Semitic. And
He's not stupid. He knows what he's doing. That's perfect deception. That is trying
yeah,
to twist
and then
words.
yeah, and then he was like, "Oh, but they have the choice to do that. They could choose to be anti-Semitic and therefore masculine and therefore American." Like it was insane.
Fucking hell, leapfrogging like mad. But it
Yeah,
like I got in a discussion with someone before, and he spoke at me with some of the most moronic of pointations because he was just trying to see how much I knew on things. And as soon as I give an app's description of what corporatism is, I got no response. Like fascists constantly want to get people who don't know definitives. Like if you know what Semitism actually is, well, you're just one of those people that made the wrong choice,
yeah,
including your definitive. That's what they'll look at it. It's like, well, we're already thinking you made the wrong choice.
yeah.
Position
I
wise, you chose the wrong side. But they're also going to believe that they've made wrong assumptions to allow themselves to pick the wrong side. It's the prognition of anti-Semitism, and most of these people know that fucking anti-Semitism is against Jewish people. It's all excuse bullshit. Like even the fucking most ignorant and unknowing of fascists can be that way. I mean, fucking, you know, most of my accessibility to understanding what fascism was growing up was the fucking Hitler channel. I can tell you now, I wasn't the most educated of fascists, and I was a fucking anti-Semite. So like, it's not about how much they know as well. It's also just about how fucking messed up people are in certain points in their life. Not saying any of these people can't change, but yeesh. I mean, I have my fucking heads fucking smacked out of the fucking sky would be the metaphor I'd use for it for me to change my world. Oh, also, I didn't
Ironically,
like the fucking fact that the Americans were genocidal maniacs, and that completely subverted a lot of my weird fucking military chivalry bullshit I had pushed into my head growing up. Because, yeah, a lot of people grow up believing that shit. That like
yeah.
the armies of Europe in the days of old were like fucking, you know, like have you ever seen the movie The Mohawks? Um, like the French and the British come together and they have a lovely little chat and appreciate each other's acquaintance. Are all lovely to each other and like la 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 have a little chat about like you shouldn't. It's like armies didn't typically meet like that and have a lovely little chat. Like we weren't like these chivalrous men who went and fucking like fought in fair quarter. No, we were opportunistic fucking monsters that fought wars of obliteration. And every time they're going about like we protect like aristocrats in wars. Go look up the 100 Years' War, where we actually protected the fucking peasants of the lands that we were taking because we wanted to fucking profit off the lands. It's the whole point of the war. And targeted specifically the aristocracy of those places because if you knock out the aristocracy, you can replace them with yours. That's how colonialism started. It's the fine pointation of colonialism where you take over the serfdom of the land through lordship takeover. We did the same thing in Ireland. We took over Ireland. We killed the we kill the aristocracy of the land for genocide. We massacre many of the people because we saw them as lesser than we saw the French, and we used to be in an empire with the French called the Norman Empire. Oh, we're much more abusive with the people of Ireland, but we obviously want to use them again to profit, and so we enslaved their serfdom. I mean, serfs are slaves, but not chattel slaves. You know, like people don't understand that there's more than one type of slavery a lot when they look at how slavery works. You know, house slave, chattel slave, serfdom. Um, I think Roman and Greek and what we understand about Egyptian slavery would also still be called chattel. I don't know. Like I'm not well immersed on what the terms would be around the Romans, so we'll just say
Well, yeah. Well, the Romans was like they also called it. No, I don't want to call it that.
it was a caste system. So I guess it's
Yeah,
different. Is caste different? Yeah, caste is different to child. So it's caste slavery, like what we did in India. There we go.
Yeah.
right.
That was modeled after the Romans.
Oh,
Like
oh, oh,
we didn't just learn about like the caste system from the Indians and then stole it from them. Like they were actually phasing it out. We saw it as
I,
advantageous, but we always wanted to be like the Romans. If you actually hear the British in the 1800s, they were proclaiming themselves New Rome, and that we've brought the control of the seas that Rome had, and that all they need next is a control of of the rest of Europe and Asia so that they can control the landmass. Eurasia was something that the British were quite fond of the idea of.
Right. Does that go back to like
Become land Rome, which the Germans also wanted to do. That's why they went to war with China.
doesn't that go back to like the whole heartland and the candor and all that?
Mm.
If you, it's that one English guy who like wrote about conquering Eurasia, basically.
In the late 1800s, I think he's the same guy who proclaimed Britain as the new Rome and wrote a lot of extensive stuff. Because I think Lenin talks about him.
Right.
Because I know Lenin talks about Locke a lot. He talks about because I think Locke is the guy who turns around and is like, yeah, Locke is a fucking like he loves him. He loves this shit, and he's defining imperialism in a way that's more accurate for us to analyze and critique than these fucking Kautsky dick cheeses. Like, Locke ain't fucking like, ooh, imperialism, and he's still just finding it fucking perfectly fine for us to analyze. When you find an honest fascist, it's like, finally, someone is just going to openly be it so we can compare you to the other fuckers and we get a better portfolio and things going on. It's like an open Mosleyite. Finally, someone I can actually just directly persecute and no one's going to go like, dude, he's not a fascist.
Yeah, for real.
Fucking hell. The wet fart of bitches that embrace the employing themselves around the internet is fucking mad.
the one thing I find really freaking hilarious is just how cowardly most fascists tend to be. Like, you call them a fascist and they fucking lose their shit. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not a fascist. I'm not a fascist. Like, constantly say some fascy shit. It's the same shit I deal with at my job. Like, about a quarter of the people I work with are fascists, and this one libertarian dipshit that I debate, I don't know why I torture myself debating this guy, constantly does slavery apologelia. You know, because slavery's bad, but the whole world was doing it at the time. It was Western civilization that ended slavery.
Oh, it's so stupid.
And you know what? He got pissed when I brought up that what you just said was Western chauvinism.
Yeah.
When
really
he brought
is.
up, you know, one thing I really cannot stand. I will say this: people who say they're free thinkers, yet they're the ones that they're the most indoctrinated of them all.
Yeah, they really are.
Buggedly fuck.
And I don't think a free thinker has to constantly advertise that they're a free thinker.
I mean, like, no, they shouldn't have to advertise it, but it is an important discussion to be had because Engels gets into this, and it's sort of like these petty bourgeois people wish they were free thinkers. Like, let's be real. And when even if they are pushing out to be free thinkers, it's like, okay, but what are you actually committing yourself towards? When Engels talks about like how society will be driven by free thinking people, the new man, uh, he's speaking of what Gramsci speaks of when he's talking about organic intellectuals. People, but Engels is talking at the point in which we cement society and move forward, and the new man will drive that forward, and that is when the societal structure is organized and developed around the consciousness of these organic intellectuals, the proletarian intellectuals, who
It's
will
like
then drive forward the new academic style, the new organizational functions and forces of society. It will be the dialectical shift forward from the petty bourgeois intellectuals that control society today. And back in them days, there was a lot more bourgeois people who were actually in part of the intelligentsia as well. Like just outright big capitalists. Like I'm talking millionaires in those days, so like billionaires today.
you know what's
Right.
interesting? This coworker of mine got so pissed off when I mentioned when I mentioned I don't give a shit. I don't care about what some bourgeois intellectual has to say. I would rather listen to someone who has experience
Yeah,
with
trust.
it.
So it should
Like
be.
like I said, I'd rather listen to Malcolm X than some guy that has who's a bourgeois intellectual.
Bro, some of the best communists have fuck all education. James Connolly couldn't fucking read or write until he was a fully grown man and married back in Ireland. He grew up in Little Ireland in Scotland. One of the most rundown, if not the most rundown ghetto in Scotland.
Fucking.
It's like Malcolm X did barely knew how to read or write until he was in prison. And he said it himself in his biography. Prison was his high school and college. Like he was so he the people that worked in the prison that he was in were actually intimidated by Malcolm X. It's one of the reasons he was released early because how educated he was. They didn't want him educating the other prisoners.
Didn't you say that guy was like quoting like Thomas Sowell or some shit?
Yes,
Sowell or
that
Yeah.
fucking guy.
like the guy. I wouldn't even give him the honor of even being a bourgeois intellectual. That guy's just a straight up suit. Like I've seen like liberal professors like decimate him intellectually.
Well,
Yeah,
it's just
Thomas Sowell is a guy who claimed to once be a Marxist. No, he was a neo-Marxist. He actually did some okayish studies as a neo-Marxist, like I think a lot of understanding about the exclusion of black people from education came from those days. But then, like in modern days, he's really racist towards black people and their struggles in society. And it's okay, what the fuck happened to you, man? You already were like a deep fried, shitty version of deep fried stuff. Actually, makes it taste good. What makes stuff taste bad? Grilled. He's a grilled fucking. I don't know. You know, he's a microwaved. There you go. That makes
well,
shit taste
I would
horrible.
consider him
He's a microwaved Marxist at best. And fucking neo-Marxists are more third position than they are fucking second. Let's be fucking real.
I would consider like
And then
I mean,
like, oh what? He quit, became a conservative for some reason. Now he's like the Greenpeace guy who turned into a fucking what's it?
You know what's funny about
Turned into an anti global warming activist.
you know what's funny about Thomas Sowell and like his early years as a Marxist or whatever. I think he said he was only a Marxist like in his 20s. So it was like 1950s that he was, I guess, apparently a Marxist. Was that I always heard that he was specifically like a fan of early Marx, and that's what he means by a Marxist. And he actually had a big issue with Marxism Leninism, so that's very telling.
So,
Yeah.
fucking,
well,
all
well,
left, all of these left comes, or we'll call them by what they've been calling themselves for the last fucking 30 years, Marxist humanists.
Yeah.
The fascists. Let's be real. Humanism, in its modern conception, is comes from Roosevelt's intellectualism, which is an evolution of Victorian humanism from the last century.
Yeah.
well, this Thomas Sowell guy, I looked up his background really quick. It's like he comes from a poor background, just like Malcolm X, but this guy has nothing but contempt for the poor, especially his own
Never used
community.
to. So at one point, he actually did studies that showed like real shit as to why like black people in poverty are struggling more than everyone else, and he did actually care in his early days. So I don't know what the fuck happened to him.
Well, yeah, I did hear he was offered a position in the Nixon administration. So.
Oh well, there you go. He had a LaRouche moment.
Well, isn't it funny how these so-called free thinkers who are right wingers? I just bring up my coworker. He's just like every other these dipshits. There's nothing these people love more than a former liberal or former so-called leftist, and they expect you to read with them when they. And this guy was claim he actually that I didn't know what I was talking about when I told him when I challenged him that he hasn't never read Marx. So who are you to tell me to read something I disagree with when you won't do the same for Marxism?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of historically, a lot of fascists were former what they thought were leftists, but in reality, I would say they were probably never really leftists. Because
Right.
a lot of them usually end up saying like, "Oh, I had a problem with Marx's theory of like surplus value or some shit, some stupid shit like
Do you
that."
know
Like,
who Mussolini modeled himself off?
who?
Georgie Sorel.
Oh yeah, George Sorrell. Yeah,
The guy who sided with reactionaries. And the reactionaries he sided with was a group called Action Française, which helped Hitler genocide the Jews in France during World War II and Romani.
I believe Sorrell also never said he never believed in Marx's theory of surplus value.
Oh yeah, and by the way, you want to the people two people who inspired him, Hayek, and I forgot the other guy. I think one of them openly praised the Pinochet regime. So that should tell you everything you need to know about these people that push this guy.
Yeah.
I don't understand how anyone could push this guy. It's like Jesus. It's like, I mean, this guy is against Noam Chomsky. None of us are fans of Noam Chomsky.
Right.
But when you're like dismiss Noam Chomsky, what he has to say, it's like this guy is the ultimate bootlicker of the status quo.
I
He is
don't know. Noam Chomsky's the ultimate bootlicker of the status quo.
he's pretty milk toast though. He even said some shit about Howard Zinn as well. It's like this guy. There isn't a single liberal or someone slightly to the left that he hasn't said anything bad about. It's like the guy is disgusting to me. The only kind of people that would love this guy are fucking reactionaries and people that cannot, see themselves like opposing the status quo, or they think they're opposing the status quo, but the status quo they're opposing is the status quo that isn't working for them.
Yeah. Like, oh, another fucking
They're trying to protect it.
another fascist that used to be a Marxist was Werner Sombart, who, interestingly enough, at one point Engels actually complimented this guy, saying that he thinks he's probably the only German professor that truly understands capital. And this guy later became a Nazi.
Well, that's like how fucking Mussolini was praised. But if you actually look at Mussolini's beliefs as a Marxist, he was a shit Marxist. Mussolini came from the working class as well. That's the most heartbreaking thing.
Yeah.
You want to know another person? You want to know another person that was a Marxist but became a fascist?
Who?
Or I don't know if I would consider Trotsky as Marxist, whatever you want to call them. Christopher Hitchens.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, Trotsky was the horror of fascism and was as Gramsci says himself,
Yeah.
a Kaiserist. So
Yeah.
and anyone who's claiming to be a socialist, there's also a Kaiserist.
Yeah, everyone should check out Parenti just fucking run circles around Hitchens and the debates.
It was the most funniest. It was the best. When I watched that debate, this was years after I was disillusioned by new atheism. I was like appalled by like, wait, how did I ever see this guy as someone brilliant? This guy sounds like an idiot.
I just imagined fucking him actually getting up out the chair and physically running circles around him while shouting, "You're a fucking Nazi pig! You're a Nazi pig!" Trotsky's the Nazi pigs, and then he just fucking leaves.
That would also be a
Yeah.
victory.
One thing I'd like to talk about. I wanted to talk about it until we talked this stream's been good. I mean, history is a very important topic to talk about. I'd
Yeah.
like to discuss what's currently going on in Iran.
Iran, as the Americans say.
It's pretty wild to see, I mean, it's
Boy.
expected. I mean, these people are not really Marxist Leninists, or anything they try to frame them as is anything even remotely on the left. Like, they'll do anything to defend a fucking repressive fucking regime.
Well, they're
just
defending
to
a
push their bullshit.
theocracy.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
defending literal
it's
fucking theocracy in this shit.
right. Like let's be honest. I mean, they got a morality police, being a woman and all that. It's just I can never support anything like that.
The morality police. That sounds like
That's
the
what
most
they.
fascist shit ever.
I
like,
know.
you know,
Real.
I mean, Iran's a
not
fascist
even
state.
the Nazis called their thing the morality police. They still had a scary name. Like you're giving it like a creepy name. It's like the fuck. Like that sounds like you're having to invade people's privacy way too fucking much. And I'm not saying they're
Right.
doing worse than the Nazis. The Nazis did fucking terrible shit. I'm just saying that like even in the terrible shit they were doing, they didn't go and call it the morality police. Like Jesus Christ. But this is Nazi
Right.
shit. At the end of the day, women are rising up. They have a right to rebel, especially against reactionaries in a
Yeah.
fucking theocracy. Like, fucking get a grip of yourselves, people. I don't
Right.
care. Like, at the end of the day, like, as well, my biggest focus on this, because people get distracted by like the liberals and their take on this. Fuck the liberals. We've got Marxists, supposedly Marxists, people who call themselves MLs, turning around and saying that, like, trying to go against the women and saying it's like, yeah,
Right.
what are you against anti-imperial bullshit like that?
What is a
They're more dangerous. They're more of a problem, and the fascists, the outright fascists that are opposed to this, because obviously they're opposed to women's rights, even
Right.
when someone who holds fascist socioeconomic standards are fucking, So wait, sorry, I got that all mumbled. They're gonna side with their fucking allies, and they're gonna be opposed to women's
Right.
rights uprising. But the can't English myself. Sorry, I only woke up when fucking I joined.
I'd like to
Only
answer
had
a
one
question
coffee today, but
on,
the
hold that
but
thought for a second.
but
Hold on, just for a second. Sorry.
1 second, I just
Attack.
need to finish this.
Hold- no. Sorry.
Is that fucking with the Iran? These oppositions need to be dealt with on the more direct side of things, because the liberals, they're gonna talk all sorts of shit for both sides of the bench, because fucking America will find any open door of revolutionary action to abuse. So there's that one side of it. There's also the side of it where they see it as increased instability, which the liberals don't want right now, because, well, fascism is in power and has taken hold of everything. And the more instability there is, the more excuse there is for fascism to flare more of its teeth and not take things slow and nicely for the liberals, so they don't fucking
Right.
twist their neck. Because I mean, that's what social democracy is more centered about. It's more bothered about the center than it is about the left these days, because the left is a joke, and the
Yeah.
right. But I mean, social democracy is a
The-
right-wing ideology. But with all of this, it's they're not the important focus. The important focus is the people whom are purposefully opposed to this, because they see it as weakening their great allies that are great examples of the societies they want. That's why Caleb pushes China and Iran as socialists, because they're all
Right.
very conservative
Yeah, jeez.
countries.
Iraq.
Hate women and hate gays and fucking hate African people. I don't know about Iran on
Yeah.
that one, but I know fucking China has a fucking big racism problem. And you can all go, oh wow, look, the British guy's calling someone racist. Yeah, I fucking know. I'm Anglo and part fucking Celtic. Don't like being called British. It's cringe. But fair enough. Fair enough. But I'm anti-racist, and I believe that fucking racism is not a problem that is just akin to fucking Europe, and I think it'd be racist to say otherwise. You don't think that the Chinese are capable of racism? Go ask Africa. Like, I understand I'm on a difficult pedestal to push this fucking point, but it's got to be pushed. We can't shy away from it. Shying away from it is fucking playing white pity party. That's where you stop being, that white pity party of fucking trying to restrict your activity of discussion through some weird idea that by you being of European descent and pointing out racism, you invoke hypocrisy. That's not how it works. Um, and to be honest, it actually puts black people in a very awkward position when white people are unwilling to point out a problem that affects them. As Black Red Guard said, I can't believe that any of these white people actually want to support black people's issues when they won't. They're unwilling to call China out for its oppression of African people in Africa.
Seriously, yeah.
Right. Yeah, they did like they're trying to argue the reverse way, or in their minds, like, be silent during when we don't need silence, we need people to speak out. Right.
Well, the thing with Iran is you're just doing the CIA's work for them by pushing every single legitimate grievances with these governments as a color revolution.
Right.
It's like you're what the hell are you doing? You're basically pushing like fucking lies. Like there is legitimate grievances in the Iranian government, and no, I don't support a fucking war with Iran. I don't want a war with Iran. It's not going to solve any problems. Because we can be against the government without actually supporting the fucking United States and NATO's fucking genocidal fucking sanctions on Iran. We don't support that either.
Right.
And plus, it's pretty foolish to call it a color revolution when I don't even know how to pronounce it, but I'm gonna try. I guess the Tudeh party in Iran, which is
Right.
a communist party, they're endorsing the protests. Like,
And you know what?
condemning the government over there, and it's also been, the protests are being supported by communist parties around the world too. The KKE endorsed it. The CPIML endorsed it. I'm sure there's a lot of other parties that are endorsing it too.
Is it?
Right.
I hope I hope they overthrow their government. I don't care. You call this whatever the fuck you're gonna call it. This is you actually claim that you support the masses and the masses support history. Well, if you don't support a actual legitimate uprising against a fascist state, then you're just a fascist. You're a stooge.
I mean, at the end of the day, a color revolution has to come from the material conditions of a revolution. It's not like they just pay loads of people to go and pretend a revolution's happening. I
Right.
know the US is rich, but they're not that fucking rich. Jesus Christ. Like, at least not in the sense of, like, also needing to make millions and millions of profits for capitalists that will throw a hissy fit if you don't give them loads of profits. So,
Yeah, like
they're not going to pay them off like that.
It's like any type of fucking country or government or whatever that is like viewed as being under the fucking the eye of fucking U.S. imperialism, they'll say it's genuine. But if it's under the watch of Russian or Chinese imperialism, it's a color
Right.
revolution every fucking time. Like
Right.
what? Like, these people
Look
are
at
like
Kazakhstan, when the US is one of Kazakhstan's biggest allies.
Yeah, for real, the Kazakhstan one was crazy. Like Kazakhstan, like they have good relations with both Russia and fucking the U.S. Like, and
Yeah.
the government there has literally been privatizing fucking their oil for years, and they fucking made the Communist Party illegal there in Kazakhstan.
Also, the US didn't condemn Russia when they went into Kazakhstan.
Yeah, they didn't. They said silent as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kazakhstan was like ruled by like a Gorbachev era dictator. Like literally. Like
Yeah.
the guy ended the Communist Party of Kazakhstan, or the Soviet one. So
I love the really American way you say Kazakhstan.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Them goddamn Americans don't know in Kazakhstan. But I just love the way it is pronounced as well, though, because Koza, it's got a very like well, I guess fucking is Asian, but it's got a very lovely Asian sound to the way it's pronounced. Yeah, Koza.
I mean, it's really
It's
funny.
kind of Mongolian sounding, to be fair. Like,
I mean, it's really funny how in Cuba last year, when what we saw was an attempt at a color revolution, and everyone calls it out for what it truly is. Yet they'll ignore a legitimate grievance and freaking Iran. I'm calling it. If something like this were to happen in Venezuela, it would be called a color revolution.
It would.
Yeah, it
Damn, bro,
would.
who's cooking? Where's my portion?
Oh, it's me.
What's it? I'm wondering whether the name of the region Kazakh actually pre-exists the Mongolian Empire. I got something interesting to research later on.
Yeah.
Speaking of
The
Mongolia,
Mongolian Empire spanned over those regions, you know, like because a lot of people seem to forget about Eastern empires and what they have represented over the years, and how Mongolia,
Right.
what we now today call Russia, China, and Korea, have had a long history of being imperial oppressors. No, some people might be wondering why I've left Japan over there. Japan's actually been a victim more than it's been an oppressor in its life. Like the upper caste of Japan actually descend from Chinese settlers. Ooh, we got some polemic history here, baby. It's complicated. Oh, and Korean settlers.
I'm not familiar with that with Japanese
Oh, we're
history.
talking time ago here. Like the Japanese language actually descends from the same language as the Chinese language. Like they have a similar branch. Well, it's the Han language, I believe. I might be wrong though. It's it's one of the Chinese nationalities. There's 56 of them, so fucking good luck. Good luck fucking figuring it out without doing like vapid amounts of fucking vapid. No, a lot of Google searches. The English language is too complicated. Can someone fucking like do the matrix and plug me in a more fucking effective language to speak with, please?
Oh, dang it, love to bring up the 56 nations thing as an example of, like whatever they call it.
Yeah, except then they turn around and say one China. Like,
Yeah, and then they'll say
Yeah.
one China, and they'll just ignore like the Han chauvinism.
like, yeah, no, because one China. I'm not on about the policy. If people might be getting confused, China actually pushes through its not just through its education, but also through the so those fucking there's no other word for it, concentration camp, like, but in like the Spanish sense, as like they're really horrible prisons, but you're taught shit and then allowed to leave the Spanish Republic, I mean. Not British and German concentration camps, where it means how much can we concentrate people here to kill them. But still, nonetheless, concentration camps, where they were teaching people that there's one Chinese history, one Chinese culture, one Chinese language. Yeah, no, it's fucking genocide. No other word for it, genocide. But no one wants to talk about it because you're just pushing US propaganda. The US said they were murdering them. I'm saying something different. If you think I'm pushing US propaganda, you've got your dick twisted in a knot and you need to pull it out. Like, fuck no.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these like dingus types and all of them, they want to pretend that like cultural genocide isn't a thing. You know,
That's insanity.
yeah,
Like imagine like claiming to be in favor of right nations self-determination of like Native Americans and everything like that, while saying that bullshit when we literally did cultural genocide against them. Like we forced them into fucking boarding schools and
right.
forced them to get rid of all their fucking traditional clothing and all this shit. Didn't allow them to speak in their like native tongue. Like even my mother, who like her first language was Spanish. Like they used to beat the shit out of her in school. This is in like she was born in the early 70s, so by the time this was going on, it was late 70s, early 80s. Like they would beat the shit out of her if they caught her
Yeah.
speaking Spanish in school.
Yeah, I heard it's still
Even
happening.
though Arizona's always been recognized as a bilingual state, that's the fucking crazy thing. Like Arizona, Texas, all these places, or Texas, are bilingual states, but the education system will beat it out of you.
Right.
They do this as well. They make these languages harder to learn in universities in the modern day. Like, any language that isn't the dominant language, especially those who are of colonized descent, they make it so much harder to learn these languages. in the education system so people can't rekindle their culture. I mean, one of the biggest steps into rekindling your culture is to relearn the languages that were taken from you.
Yeah. See, and that's the crazy thing too. It's like even to this day, like it had a psychological effect on my mother. Like my mother, when she understands Spanish perfectly. Like my grandma, she'll have a conversation with my grandma. My grandma's speaking full Spanish the whole time. My mom will answer her back in English though, because like it's in her
Right.
head where she's afraid to speak Spanish. She's afraid to speak Spanish now, even if she's out of school. It's just a psychological thing.
Right, I agree. Yeah, I've seen it happen before in my family as well.
Yeah, it's nasty business, that is.
Oh, so what do you guys think of this topic about Christian nationalism?
Well, I mean, it just sounds like theocracy
It
when
It's
mostly
another
applies
name for white nationalism, really, isn't it?
Christian
So,
nationalism.
what
I
do I
mean,
think of the rise of?
Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, they were big proponents of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
so those
Well,
are.
if you want to know what my thoughts of Christian nationalism, it's think of Nazism, and that's essentially what it basically is, for the most part. Like anything we discuss about the Nazis, it easily applies to Christian nationalists. It is scary, though. I will admit just how extreme that they've been getting for the past 10 years, and
Yeah.
just how much power they hold in this country. Even though I despise Chris Hedges, he did write a good book on this subject on
Edgy boy.
um Christian fascists, when he talks about the history of the Christian fascist movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Goddamn
likes to call
Crimbo
it
fascists.
fascist. The only problem with Hedges is that he doesn't believe in historical progress, but
That's a
Chris,
weird.
Yeah, Hedges also believes in uniting right and left.
Oh God.
honestly,
yeah,
I view him as a
I
He
very
swear that's a
distinctly,
recurring fucking thing.
pointed to fascists and socialists. Like it's not even like he's hiding it.
That's
Like,
insane.
and he
Yeah, it's
went
like
on
a
Jimmy
recurring
Dore. He
fucking
went on
thing.
Jimmy Dore's fucking program to fucking point that out and advertise it to the world. Like he thought it was fucking the best thing ever. And near enough, no one fucking freaked out. No one was like, "Whoa!" and cancelled him. Like for all these people that believe in cancel culture. No, people were just like, "Okay, I don't, I, I,
Yeah.
I." I respectfully agree or disagree is basically what came out of people's mouths. Like the door and all them lot agreed with him, and anyone
right.
in their right mind disagreed with them, but no one came out like, "Whoa, look, Chris Hedges is a fascist." I mean, I've called him a fascist, but I ain't everyone. I'm just some
well,
dickhead in fucking
it was that
England,
it
and
was
Americans don't like to listen to us because, like, we're probably trying to con them into buying tea or something with extra tax.
honestly,
I
I actually
promise,
think
I'm not trying to sell any of you tea, just in case you think I am.
honestly,
No,
I actually think Chris Hedges' fascistic, um, views have always been out in the open. I just didn't see it. I mean, when I think about it, think
it
back,
is
there is
obscure compared to most of what he says, so it's hard to see in some respects.
I mean, the thing is that the thing about these fascists is they always try to say things that radical leftists would likely agree with, some things, and then say a bunch of other things. Like, I feel dirty for saying this. Chris Hedges is made a compelling argument for me to be against the existence of pornography. I can't
Yeah.
ignore that.
Yeah, and anytime I hear anything about like uniting the far left and the far right, it's like literally always like some hyper Nazi bullshit. You
It
got
is.
like
Yeah.
these Duganite motherfuckers, and then there's the. I wish it was just a meme, but it actually kind of existed for a little bit. In Italy, it was Nazi Maoism, where they were basically literally just Nazbols that believed in protracted People's War.
I just see Chris Hedges as a nihilist. That he exists specifically to discourage people from going further left. To me, he's
Yeah.
just controlled opposition. He doesn't he exists to keep leftists and put them back to the right. That's exactly what he exists for.
Oi,
Yeah.
Mosley, I fucked your dad, and what? It's a throwback. When
Yeah.
I first joined, I yelled out my name when it was Mosley.
I mean,
We're doing throwbacks here.
Jimmy Dore made the most unhinged, ludicrous video like recently, like trying to defend this fucking
Yeah.
Italian fucking new president or whatever, like the Melanie lady. Like he's saying, is she a fascist or a communist? I can't tell. It's like, dude, in no way is she a communist. You freaking insane weirdo.
Right.
Okay, I think Jimmy Dore is a lot smarter than any of us are giving him credit for. He knows
He knows
Oh
what
exactly
yeah,
what
he's
he
he's
knows
doing.
what
doing.
he's doing. He's got money on his mind. He knows exactly
Yeah.
what he's doing.
I think he has a little more than money on his mind. I think he does want to push for some form of social fascism in America on a more existential basis. Like, I mean, he's been
Yeah.
interested in
Yeah.
politics since mid 2000s.
Well,
Yeah, this is like literally. I believe this is what happens like when your politics don't go beyond fucking populism. It's
right.
like Gramsci kind of gets into it where he calls populism a thin ideology that should ideally evolve into a thick ideology. But usually,
Um,
yeah, in terms of like the thick ideologies, meaning it goes way beyond populism. So like that's why Marxism is not really populism. It's much more advanced than that.
if anything, we're anti-populism because populism is tailism and tailism is blind.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
populism is also neuroticism and all that as well.
Yeah,
So,
and
To be
all the
honest,
revolutionaries.
I think it's more like this is justification for otherwise activities. So I mean, I think like most people go for populism because populism sells, which means they believe they have an idea that doesn't. Normally, it's so much as it's more so a thin excuse for a terrible ideology that is thick in its content. I mean, there are some populists that are just thin shit morons, but a lot of them are people who have a very dense portfolio, but they see people as morons. It's a thin idea of how people think and people function. And I, to be fair,
Yeah,
I don't think Gramsci missed that bit either. I think this is more gets over into what he gets at later on with Kaiserism and how Kaiserists
yeah.
see the world and see people.
Yeah, and I noticed the same. It's the same similar thing that these fucking Danish revisionists try to do with the mass line. Is they'll try to frame the mass line as being like populism, and it's complete bullshit. Um,
They think the mass line means that the masses follow them.
yeah,
The mass line is like the counter to tailism. It's like, yeah, you follow the masses, that's the mass line, but you follow a line that's been dictated by the intellectuals of the fucking proletariat. Like, that's all, the proletarian intellectuals have the best connection to the mass people. So if you're going to go and reach out to the masses, you reach out for them. I mean, realistically, the Communist Party should already be led by proletarian intellectuals, so that shouldn't even need to be a step. But unfortunately, in the third world, sorry, in the third world, in the first world, communism is dominated by petty bourgeois, first worlders, and labor aristocrats, and we have to first tell them that they have to fucking listen to the proletarian intellectuals with that step back. And you do proletarian reach out, you make a portfolio, you then consolidate amongst the Communist Party of what that portfolio entails, what it means, and then you don't make a decision yet. You re-engage with the proletariat and you reorganize amongst those same masses that you were looking to seek out what it is they want, what is their line, and you bring the portfolio you've now designed based off of that initial engagement with the masses, and then you pointiate a directive upon the mass line that the proletarian masses and the proletarian intellectuals have all agreed on, and the petty bourgeois intellectuals that the proletarian intellectuals have allowed to sit in and discuss things with. But they don't really have deciding power, in my opinion. I think the mass line is compromised if you allow the petty bourgeois intellectuals too much deciding power and things. They should be
yeah,
advisors, and then the proletarians make the decision.
yeah, it's pretty funny too because after the death of Mao, Liu Shaoqi or Shaoqi, however you pronounce his name, um,
I think
like
it's Chao-Chi.
Shao-Chi. Yeah, he fucking specifically reinterpreted the mass line, and I noticed that every time I've ever tried to talk with a dangoid on mass line, they'll try to they'll try to reference this guy, and he specifically. So a lot of times, like most of the time, like if you're not a revisionist motherfucker, you say that there's the advanced section, and then most people are in the intermediate section, and then there's the backwards. But Lu Shaoqi or Shaoqi, yeah, whatever, I already forgot. He specifically interpreted that most of the masses were backwards, which is really strange. Basically saying like they have reactionary fucking class consciousness and all this shit. Like, yeah, it's pretty insane. Is considering like the mass line formula would be, unite the advanced, uplift the intermediate, and win over or isolate the backwards. That can't be
I
won
don't
over.
like those old rhetoric because it's normally used in a classist and a colonial fashion. I prefer conscious, semi-conscious, or unconscious, or it'll complicate things more with the labor aristocracy, not of proletarian conscious.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's probably better wording, but that's
Yeah,
essentially what he was
because
talking
like
about.
a
Like
lot of
with
people use the
consciousness, yeah.
backwards to be like, okay, well, if you're the lowest class, you're obviously then the backward one, then the labor
Oh
because
no,
they
yeah, that would be a complete revision of the mass line because mass line's not even talking about classes. It's talking about consciousness. It's all about consciousness for mass
yeah,
line.
I know. The Mao's very distinct in that, but like because it's translated, the language kind of like echoes back. This is what I mean. It's almost like it might be a translation error because I feel weird when Mao and Lenin would both use words like backwards because it doesn't feel like communist vocabulary.
Yeah.
Because they translated works and they're not translated by the authors. A lot of the time, not even translated in the same country. I know the Soviet Union did do some translations of works and things, but the normally it's by foreign entities that a lot of the time might not be very well immersed in the languages they speak. I don't know if you know the long history of England and fucking up Chinese. That's what old Chinese is. It's not even real. It's not even proper Chinese. It's just a shit translation of Chinese by the English.
Yeah, like they'll use this like bullshit fucking thing where they basically try to justify their shitty taoism by claiming that all like the vast majority of the masses are part of the backwards consciousness, and that we have to fucking follow them. It's like no, it completely gets rid of the fucking whole point of the mass line. It gets rid of like uplifting the proletariat to a higher level of consciousness than they already are. Like these people are just trying to justify economism, something Lenin debunked 120 years ago.
Honestly, it just comes off to me as these people who say such a thing have nothing but contempt for the masses.
Oh, absolutely. Like they think the masses are idiots and fucking like barbarians, basically that don't know anything. Like that's how they treat it all the time, and they that's the same way that they treat. Going back to the Iran thing, they pretend as if
Right.
women in Iran don't have any agency of their own. Like like they don't have their own struggles in Iran going on right now.
Well,
Like
the worst part about it is like they're acting like there wasn't a time where Iran wasn't a hardcore theocracy. It's like
it
no,
still is, yeah.
right.
And the funny thing is too is what's this guy's name? I think it starts with a K. The leader in Iran,
The
Well,
Ayatollah
Khomeini.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, like he literally
Caleb
like
specifically calls him a father figure socialist.
yeah, like
Oh,
holy shit, like it came out that he was literally in contact with the U.S. government like days and weeks before the fucking like revolution came. Like
right.
He also supported the war on terror. The US started having a problem again with Iran in the mid 2000s when they started trying to do their own thing. I wonder I wonder if there's a pattern here. Russia, China, they were big
Yeah.
allies of the US in the early 2000s. Do people forget this? The 90s, big allies. Like fucking
yeah,
hell, man.
look at what the fuck they did to the communists. Like after that, after this dude came to power, like they fucking
Right.
repressed the hell out of the communists. They killed them. They fucking tortured them. They imprisoned them. Like they crushed their fucking
Gaddafi
movement. Like
Gaddafi
Right.
fucking aided. There's evidence that shows that Gaddafi aided in the fucking death of Thomas Sankara, and may have tried to kill. I think if my Arab brother watches this, which he might, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Hamad Jabri that they tried to hand over to the fucking Israelis. I might be wrong. It was a fucking famous anti-Israeli and
yeah, keep in mind, like the CPI and Caleb, like they always fucking brought up Gaddafi in his stupid green book or whatever. I'd never heard him talk about Sankara ever. Like he probably rarely ever brought up, avoided him at all costs if possible, because he probably knew that Gaddafi would come in conflict with him.
Right.
He also
Yeah.
avoided Malcolm X in order to prop up Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah. He also pretended
Louis.
to uphold the Black Panthers, even though he made that disgusting rant against the lumpen proletariat, and said, but what did he say? He said like we were like romanticizing the lumpen or some stupid shit. Like,
Yeah.
Thunder Rose today want to do the Arun Palestine stream.
Sounds
The
good by me.
Palace stream.
We got Paul
Oh,
on
Gingrich,
board.
yeah.
What time? Hello.
yo,
You what? Sorry.
We got Paul on board for a good time.
Nah. Like, what's it? He's not one for doing live stream discussions. He's more
Gotcha.
centered around
He's more-
structured discuss stuff. I have a very unstructured model, so like, we're gonna do something together at some point, but like, more complicated regarding streaming.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I need to get an interview of the guy on my channel because like, Paul is a fucking G, and he's fucking got some sound connections with AI and the fucking the Revolutionary Housing League.
oh, wait, sorry, I spaced. I was typing.
Paul
You say you're
Moran.
getting Paul Moran on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
want to
cool.
I want to do an interview with Paul Moran at some point, and fucking what's it?
Paul Moran's he always puts out banger ass videos, dude. He's got bass
Paul-
shit.
Trust, I need to do some
Moran is
breakdowns of some
based.
of his fucking best videos because like fucking there's some sick shit in there. He just fires out some fucking top facts that I'd love to dive into with people, and it just makes things a bit easier having some of the clips about.
Yeah, I love his videos.
His videos on the Irish struggle are fucking beautiful, and even my birthday releases a fucking bass video. Yeah, birthday present.
The
yeah.
infocels despise him, and for good
Oh, yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were calling him Paul Moron or some stupid shit.
Something stupid.
Yeah.
Fucking they always get fucking like so bum hurt when fucking someone's more smarter than they are and
Yeah.
knows their shit. They hate
Well-
people that know their shit.
Yeah.
What actually made them hate him because he said something about Cuba. That was the
They
first
actually
thing that
they
set him
started
off.
hating him because he started criticizing China. Because at first he actually was like, a lot of people when they become a Marxist, he didn't have so much of a problem with China, and then noticed that China's fucked, and was like, oh, whoa. And
See,
so they
yeah,
started
and
like
it was-
trying to
it was
call him
a-
bread tube. They tried to call him bread tube at one point. So what the fuck is playing bread tube?
Oh, that's
This
so
guy's a
stupid.
fucking Maoist.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that what made me really respect Paul Moran at first was he actually at first had a really shitty like dangest interpretation of China, but Premier Matthew, I don't know if you've seen that guy's channel. He used to make a lot of videos. I think he's coming back soon. He's got really good videos. You check him out. He made a great video criticizing Paul Moran's old views on China because Paul Moran used to not believe that China was imperialist. Then Premier Matthew made a video debunking it, and he conceded. Like Paul Moran conceded, and he basically was like, "Yeah, I was wrong on China," and he made a whole stream self-criticizing.
I
Brought
wouldn't
him on.
promote Premier Lies. Like, yeah, they did do a good video criticizing China there, but most of their content's dodgy.
I've seen like 5 or 6
There's
videos.
a couple videos that were okay, like, but most of their shit's dodgy, and fucking they did try and fucking cause problems for fucking Jason at one point as well.
Oh shit, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the Premier Lies thing comes from. Jason fucking hates fucking Matthew.
Oh shit. Yeah, that's the thing though. Is that Paul Moran at least, Paul Moran will self-criticize if he genuinely feels like he was wrong on something, and I like that.
Yeah, trust. It's knowing that, like, okay, this is facts. What I got was fucking wrong and confused, and I need to change my positions, and that's fucking Marxism at its fucking finest.
Yeah, the funny thing is that Paul in that original video, he did the same stupid thing that all the dangists do, where they're like, oh, but they execute some billionaires. That means they're socialists or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jeffrey Epstein certainly
they.
throw them banner in that.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
well,
like wow, I'm unaware that capitalists didn't kill other capitalists all the time to gain like market share, but
well, the worst part is like these Dangus like did that in their debates with the Vosh and all that. Like that was their arguments like during
they use
those
the
type
same
of
they use the
debates.
same argument all on Twitter on all those
Yeah,
dumb debates. Like they say the most ridiculous shit. I mean, what Default had his debate on fuck it with Vosh and made a fool of himself, not knowing anything about imperialism, claiming that his
right.
definition of imperialism came directly from Lenin's Imperialism on High Stage of Capitalism book, even though it didn't at all.
Wait, hold on. Which one of the Hazites were schooled by Vosh of all people on Marxism?
Uh,
Was that
Several
Dust
of them.
James?
Some of them.
No, that was Yankee Tanky.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yank KKK Tanky.
I'm sorry. I
Hanky
will never.
Tanky Yankee Wanky Tanky
Spanky.
Yeah, you know what's so hilarious?
anchor.
The funniest shit from that. Oh, there's several things that are hilarious. One, he said revisionism doesn't exist, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two, he said that when he made the ridiculous claim that when Marx and Lenin were talking about democracy being necessary for socialism, he claimed that they were talking about countries like Iran, a literal fucking theocracy.
Right.
That's hilarious.
I mean, he is a fucking devout Catholic, so.
Yeah, Yankee also like he actually I saw his channel the other day because I was curious because he blocked me on Twitter because I rolled him on imperialism.
Right.
I saw that he endorsed MAGA communism. So.
Oh God.
Dark MAGA.
Okay, I'm just gonna let you guys know this is the last time we're talking about MAGA communism.
Don't
Yeah.
worry,
Yeah.
it'll be rebranded soon. So
Yeah, it'll be
I'm
when
gonna-
I get it'll be rebranded again for like the millionth time. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean this one's basically a laughing stock. They're gonna go to something else next. Well, watch them try to advocate joining Andrew Yang's Forward Party next.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Hey, did anybody ever do a stream on Dugan? Or I guess nobody has yet. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we kind of talk about him here and there all the time. Anyway, I mean,
I mean, there is
Right.
the one stream that I haven't edited and removed the BBC footage. They got it taken down. Where we did the Dugan conference and spent more time talking at the start than we did actually during the Dugan conference. And I was supposed to get it edited and re-uploaded, but that's how fucking bad I am with editing. It's just like I've fucking run away from that level of fucking stress and effort. It's just fuck. Like
Right.
I've been in a health crisis at the moment. I'm hoping that when I get my fucking self back on my feet and I've dealt with fucking the NHS. I forgot what the health service name was then. Just fucking is what it's been. Then I'm hoping that I might be able to do more edited and more fucking consistent content because fucking I don't like the destructured nature I've got. It's something that I've just flown with because people have tried to tell me that I should get involved in stuff like this and I fucking weren't ready. And I just eventually found a way to throw myself in, like you can't do it, throw yourself in the deep end. So I just fucking did a really spastic dive sideways and landed on my back. And hey, now I'm here. Hopefully, because fucking health crisis I'm in right now is about half a decade in the making. So that's great.
fuck.
Collection of fuck ups and then like trying to go through the active medical streams because I was specifically told by my doctor that like, oh, they're turning down cancer patients for treatment. So you're gonna have to sit on waiting lists because they're not gonna help you in the emergency room, even though it might need that. And it's like, okay, and that was fucking 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. It was when the coronavirus was. No, it's just it was when the coronavirus started. That was said. So that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 2.5 now because it was the start of the year.
It's hard to believe it's been that.
And they were
fucking
turning down
long.
cancer patients for treatment, so they were just like, like you fucking even if you need immediate help, it's not likely going to happen. And so I went through the waiting list and streams and all like that, and then I was treated like shit by the doctors I ended up getting to see with. They told me that I needed to come back for shit to do other tests and stuff, and I told them, okay, well I can only come back in a month. I haven't got the money to come back tomorrow, and they booked my appointment for the next day. And so obviously I ended up getting discharged. I got no credit. I got nothing. I couldn't fucking like ring in and sort things out, and I couldn't get there by ringing things up and all that because like I really struggle with making phone calls and reaching out and doing stuff like that because of my fight or flight response mode being permanently activated. I expect every phone call to go off in an explosion. I didn't have any credit to do it anyway. But having credit wouldn't solve the problem, is what I'm getting at there, because of my communication difficulties. But regardless, I'm in a position where I've told them I have no money. I've had to spend it all on bills and getting food in my yard. I ain't got the money to come back tomorrow. I'll book my appointment the next day, so I get discharged. I eventually get in contact with them again, and that same doctor speaks to me on the phone, speaks to me like shit again, and then fucking hangs up when I'm trying to lay down Wagwan and why fucking everything was fucked up. You know, and I then have to go through the hospitals, which I've been fucking gaslit, and then when I fucking have a bad reaction, when they're fucking not even letting me fucking tell them, when they've asked me to tell them what's going on, they won't even let me fucking get to the point before they start fucking trying to gaslight me and get rid of me. Because fucking, you have to speak like you're fucking just taking crack with these people, otherwise, fucking, they don't want to go about you. And the second hospital I was in, um, well, actually, it's the second one's out of the ones I was thrown out because there was the other two where I was spoken to in a way where it was like, "Why are you here?" but didn't actually explain what he meant by that. And then the second doctor turned around and explained what I want, and he was explaining that the specialist I need isn't at that hospital. Which, thank you for telling me that, because the other doctor didn't. He just said, "Why are you here?" Very descriptive. Thank you. And he told me about I had to go to either Birmingham or other places like that because they'll have what I need. And so the first hospital I was just thrown across the fucking car park after being gaslit, and then when I swore in response to it, I was told to watch my language and stuff like that, and I told him to not be a bitch, so he got fucking security to lob me out. And then the second time, um, I was explaining the thing, and they went to gaslight me, and I summarized the other guy, but instead they tried to close up. The other guy instead was gaslighting me to tell me to disorient me and imply that I'm not fucking speaking of the issues at hand. When I go to speak of a tandem issue, there's two problems that are connected, and it's easier for me to talk about the damage that happened with the medication than it is to talk about the injury, considering I've openly spoken with you all about the damage of the medication, but not the injury. And so, like, I go with that first. I get gaslit on that again the second time, but this time they're trying to close up on it rather than allow me to even finish. When I'm asking them to please let me finish continuously, and I rise up because of how hypersensitive overloads operate, and I also suffer with bipolar, and I start yelling. And when I know that, mind you, I knew what was going to happen, and I was at the point of losing my shit. I started saying I was having a hypersensitive overload. I started letting them know what was happening, and then I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be aggressive. I'm just raising my voice, like, and struggling to keep control of myself because I'm trying to explain, really fucking struggling to get out shit that I've been dealing with for ages. That no one I know in person who I even trust their dearest know like one. Like, I ain't told shit. Trying to keep this to myself is fucking nasty business. And deal with it. And so, like, when that gaslight happens and then other things go on, um, uh, I had the security fucking coming in and defending me and other stuff like that, and they still fucking ended up throwing me out. And in the first one out of these two, the one where I swore and all that, before I dealt with that geezer who started getting antsy like that, I first dealt with this woman. And she was trying to accuse me of being a smackhead when I've got chronic fatigue and I'm fucking absolutely blown out. It took me 8 hours to get there because I fucked up my travel times and I missed 2 trains. And I'm not the fuck. I walked into town to save money on bus. That's fucking 3 mile of walking. and I'm fucking severely disabled. And this was before I had my walking aid, because I've been afraid to get a walking stick for years because of the fucking stigma, people fucking looking at you like a dickhead, and the way that my family have been about my disability throughout my life. So, by the time I've gotten there, I'm barely able to fucking move my right leg without fucking dragging the fucker. I'm fucking shattered to shit. And I'm turning up here exhausted. I'm a bit fucking stoned too, because I smoke joints when I travel places. So I'm exhausted, I'm stoned, I'm fatigued, and they treat me like I'm a smackhead. And I'm explaining to them that, why one, and she's like, "No, I know people with chronic fatigue." So what the fuck? Like, sure you do, and I guarantee you they fucking hate you. Like, I didn't say that because I know I get thrown out, but like, fucking. Rather than allowing me to even finish or continue with things or move me on somewhere, she sent me back into the waiting room to wait for hours. I eventually pass out, wake up, and they come back and deal with me again with another geezer. I guarantee they thought like, oh, he's some smackhead, so we'll leave him in there long enough that those types of drugs will withdraw and then we'll bring him back in. Like, they fucking treat me like some baghead. And then when the other geezer brings me in, before we got antsy with me, and before I got to explaining everything, he asked me what my healthcare status was, private or social. I'm fucking tired out. I'm banged up. I'm ganged over because I passed out. Of course, I'm not just going to turn around and go, "You're no right to be asking that." I'm fucked over, so I'm susceptible. So I answered and I told him that I couldn't afford private, even if I fucking wanted to. I didn't swear because this was before I started more about swearing. This is probably my past my words too much with them. But I said that I couldn't afford it if I wanted to, and I don't really like private healthcare. I've always spoken out about this stuff because I like having interesting conversations with people in the healthcare service about the defunding of it and the stress and strain that causes, and connecting with people like that. But these people are all petty bourgeois fucking chauvinists that profit off of fucking private healthcare. So obviously the dickhead's gonna treat me like a cunt. I'm obviously just some poor fucking draghead that's fucking straining on the healthcare service. I guarantee as well, because the problem that I'm fucking starting with to get to the main injury is a bowel issue. They probably think I've just fucking damaged my bowels with smack or something, not the opiates I was prescribed for a fucking nasty injury that I could still go and fucking ring my doctors now and get prescribed. But the ones I've been taking have been the last pack I picked up fucking 2 years ago because I had to get off them. Because when you're on them for a year straight and no breaks, you destroy your fucking bowels. But that's the fuck state I've been in. A constant fucking melting pot, and I've been very honest and open and directive towards it. I haven't shied away from it like these fucking people make you want to fucking do. They make you want to fucking hide core parts of what's going on. But I tell you why I have to come forward with bowel damage. Prolonged bowel damage causes organ failure. But nah, they act like that's a GP issue. No, it's not. I know my fucking shit on this stuff. Know my shit since I was a fucking young lad on this issue, because I know fucking people, including my own nan who's had bowel cancer. But fuck off. Like, Jesus Christ. Bullshit after bullshit after bullshit after bullshit. But when I get straight on my edge, and I actually get my fucking NHS to pull its fucking own dick out its ass, hopefully I'll be making some more streamlined content. He'd be better off in the DPRK, healthcare-wise, definitely.
Yeah,
And respect for people with disabilities.
well, I always loved that one title you gave for the NHS. It was the Nationalistic
Nationalistic, socialistic healthcare service.
Yeah, you know shit's got to be bad when you're making my healthcare service look good compared to yours.
I mean, the British healthcare has a long history of eugenics anyway, so. And the only reason they did the NHS was because the military, well, they voted it in, and then the doctors were like, no, we don't want to do this, fuck you. And so the military had to come in and force the NHS to be implemented by the healthcare service.
Yeah, that sounds like something that would have to be done here in the United States too.
Doesn't sound very fucking. It's certainly not socialist, and it's definitely not very liberal. That type of function and motion. That it's great to have socialized healthcare, but no one's going to go and run and say the Nazis were doing a left wing move when they put socialized healthcare in. Neither are they going to say that with the British if they're smart. If they do the thinky, but some people are like, the Labour Party has Labour in the name and the colour is red. Some of them call themselves socialists at this time.
I have a question. Is there any difference between the Labor Party and the Tory Party at this point?
There's difference, yeah, but like,
Well, I
is
asked
there
because
difference between the fucking a conservative fascist and one that likes to center themselves on progressive politics? Kind of, but even the quote unquote progressive politics fascists, they'll always go on about traditional values. Always. Don't matter whether they fucking hate gay people, like gay people, are hip and cool with the fucking oppressed communities, or they think they're all dick shit tossers. They all think they're dick shit tossers. It's just levels of fucking bullshit that they layer around themselves. And some of them believe a lot of these progressive ideas that you get with the quote unquote progressive fascists, but they're all about traditional values. Like, they only like to accept homosexuality so long as they, these people are getting married and having families. Like, that's their mentality
Yeah.
about it. Like, if a relationship is for a family, a you know, they're fine with black people so long as they behave more like white people. That's their mentality. It's just they don't tell you the last bit. They let you finish that yourself. There's always been the fucking big idiom with fascists that are trying to hide. They don't finish their sentences. They
here's my
allow their fucking viewers to finish that for them because they just need to insinuate, and they'll set up layer questions. Both Jordan Peterson and Caleb do this, where they will talk about a topic, they will set out one angle of it while supposedly talking about two sides, and they will speak of two sides, but they will only paint the picture of one side properly, and then they will tell you, "Well, I don't know," and they'll let you decide while only really giving you a layered argument that presupposes your viewpoint.
Eradicate porn.
That sounds very much like our current politics here in the U.S. with Team Blue and Team Red. But I also wanted to get back to Iran a bit because I'll give my take on Iran. So for a lot of these chuds, these MAGA types, they got like two minds on Iran. On the one hand, um, they gotta, because officially Iran is the designated enemy at the moment, so they gotta demonize Iran as these brown Mongol hordes of ignorant, dumb savages. But on the other
No,
hand, they got the,
Iran isn't seen like that. Iran is seen as the OG white guys. That's what Iran's seen as.
I'm talking about like people, like talking about
I'm
like
just talking
MAGA chuds.
fascists. Fascists don't see Iran as Ooga Ooga brown people. They see them as like fucking, they're not doing that racism with Iran. They do that with black people. They do that with Arabs. With Iranians, they see them as like, you guys are the OG white guys. And since the eras of the British Empire, Iran has also took that fucking pill and believed themselves to be white and European, not Asian and brown.
Yeah.
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 Aryanism, which is bullshit. Aryanism is just some fucking bullshit that was cooked up in the fucking minds of colonials. Like, Iran isn't even one ethnicity. Like, how can even anyone like go down this like road? It's so complicated. Like, Iran is fucking a mashup of many different ethnicities. It's not just Persia. Like, and even Persia is more complicated than the
Well, yeah.
Persians.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like all the protests in Iran is like through all the provinces, but there is kind of like a strong or maybe like a more violent resistance up in what's called, it's technically called East and West Azerbaijan, Iran, and then there's a Kurdish area as well. But yeah, it's multinational.
Yeah, yeah, its borders have been drawn up in like one of these. It's similar to kind of like Afghanistan. These like post-colonial borders that were drawn up with like certain ethnic groups, like most Azerbaijanis live in Iran, but for some reason they don't live in Azerbaijan, and
Right.
Balochistan or all these other places. But what I was getting at with the Chuds, the MAGA Chuds, is basically so. On the one hand, they're supposed to hate Iran because that's the designated enemy. I'm talking about like Republicans here and all this other
Because they're
stuff.
part of the troika of tyranny.
The tripartite. Yes.
China, Russia, and Iran. They're seen as the biggest
Well,
opposers of U.S. empire.
Well, originally it was supposed to be Saddam's Iraq, Iran, and DPRK.
Yeah, but John Bolton, who was a part of that government that came up with that line on the Troika of Tyranny 2000 edition, he also used it in Monday for Iran, Russia, and China.
Yeah.
China.
Well, the MAGA tribes, they definitely hate China. They're to like the most extreme level.
But like the way they see these people is as Mongolians, not as like, like they see them as like a conquering horde. It's still racism. Like, don't get me wrong on that. It's still racism that they're seeing these people as, but it's not the way they look at. They look at black people as you like by the law of eugenics, victims and to be victims, like people to be oppressed. They see Mongolians as like a feared foe that could take them down through their hoarding millions. Like it's so with Iran and all that, they're seeing them as the Kaiserists of the East, our big imperial enemies. They see them not as equals, but kinda, you know what I mean? They see them as like opponents rather than like the Africans, where they see them as their rightful cattle. Even today, like slavery might be fucking supposedly over in fucking America, even though it's not. Even working class black people are still seen as fucking, the righteous slaves of the fucking of the capitalists. That's why they're so opposed in America, even more so than anywhere else in the first world, to raising the minimum wage, because it directly raises the minimum wage more of black people than it does of any other demographic in America.
Right.
Slave master mentality has not gone away. Richard Spencer's a good example of that. Fucking hell.
And
we used to know you. Yeah, that's not something to be proud of. Dickhead.
Get a real haircut. And another thing though, okay, so there's that, but the MAGA chuds, on the other hand, they look at Iran and they say, "Oh man, this is such a great model to have here," because it's like they're so jealous too. At the same time, it's like they got morality polices over there, and those uppity women.
Modernity.
Yeah, and those uppity women know their place, and fucking we don't have all this degeneracy like the LGBT.
Guys, modernism is Semitism. Choose your side.
I mean, I saw a fucking hilarious post from like the Khan of the Mecha Nazis, where he was like attacking Cuba with their new family law, whatever that just passed.
Yeah.
And he basically was like saying like, "Oh, guys, they're just a authoritarian social democracy." But and I was like, so that part is has more truth to it, but it's funny and ironic that you would say that simply because they passed a progressive legislation, but you wouldn't say the same thing to China, which is very much more so that.
Right.
Like China's like a literal imperialist country.
Yeah, and like all those like radicals, they were out there, praising the Taliban either last year or even recently, and they're out there saying that the Taliban are fighters, and freedom fighters, and
I
mean, what's the other? Yeah, or revolutionaries or whatever. It's like,
the only reason Iran even had a problem with the Taliban in the first place was because they're Sunni. and Iran is Shia. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally the difference between the two. Like, Iran was very much on the side of the Mujahideen to expel the Soviets from Afghanistan,
And fight the
supporting
Maoists.
all these. Yeah.
And all the other
And,
communist groups too, to be honest.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but like the Soviets dominated the main ML party and basically turned it into a fucking revisionist, fucking third positionist party that targeted the Maoists when they come into power. Like out of all people to start on, they're like, yeah, Maoists are
Right.
publicly number one. It's like fucking hell, what? You got the Mujahideen, the US, and all that encroaching on you, and the Maoists are your focus. It's a priority.
Right.
Priority.
yeah, but
Hey, what-
you know, they would call that based. So just like
Yeah.
they like Duterte. So
But,
Well, the
but, but
real-
guys,
God,
but guys,
Duterte. No, they even supported fucking China's defense of the election of the fucking the descendant of the fascist fucking guy who ran Peru for like Philippines for like what was it, like 30, 40 years, who ran the country for?
Yeah, the new guy, San Fernandez Marcos or whatever the hell.
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
Marcos.
Marcos.
Yeah.
but guys, China is socialist. Did you not know? What it's doing is not socially imperialist. It's not imperialist. China isn't totally socialist. I mean,
What do you mean in 2019 they made an $8.6 billion deal to send weapons into fucking the Philippines to Duterte?
Right.
I think it's hilarious though that the Mecha Nazis weren't saying that Cuba was taking the capitalist road like 10 years ago when they formally announced that they legalized like complete like freedom to buy
Ownership of
private property.
as an
Yeah,
actual
Yeah.
capitalist, not
yeah.
family owns holdings. They had that
Yeah.
like, well, they never really got rid of that. Like,
Yeah.
but they're all about like this. We were talking like distinct capitalist owning owning the functioning systems of production that the working class don't work under.
Yeah, apparently when that happened, they weren't taking the capitalist road, but you know, they passed a
Right.
law that you know is actually a based like family code law. Yeah, now they're taking the capitalist road. Okay.
One of
Right.
the guys that you fucking shared the thing of is like talking around. He's like, I was in support of what the new leader was doing until now, and it's like,
Wait a minute.
well, like like, and it's all fucking Raoul's daughter's fault. It's like I don't think Raoul's daughter went around the country and fucking turned everyone like gay or fucking something. Like I don't think that happened. Oh, fucking like what is it because Spanish colonies in fucking South America have been traditionally fucking homophobic? Yeah, so is a lot of the European world. No fucking shit. Doesn't mean we don't get rid of it, you fucking douchebags. This is not a protection of different culture values. It's just traditionalism. And like, I smell pooty.
Jeez.
Fucking,
Yeah, it was just like funny shit. It's like it came off as racist to me too. It's like these motherfuckers just think that anyone that isn't white is just some like super
Yeah.
traditionalist reactionary fucker that hates like wants to stone gay people and shit. It's like, dude, what the?
That's exactly what I brought up with Iran and Cuba. It's like it's like that whole Haas thing of like you have to be like this racist cartoon character basically.
Yeah. Or it's
They
like
depict Asian people as.
or
Yeah.
it's like with the Dugan shit where like he's like, oh well, we're us Eurasianists, we have a different empire, it's the people's imperialism, and then he's like, I believe in more, pluralist cultures and that all this, but then he starts going,
let's not get started on their support for the lady in Italy.
Oh god, that's the funniest, most ironic shit too, because like she's she's like it's kind of funny. There's like the more Richard Spencer type of fascist, where he's more like
yeah,
pro NATO, pro West and shit. And then there's like obviously the other like more I guess populists, if you would say, like fascists who are they claim to be anti-NATO. They're not anti-capitalist,
right,
obviously. They're not anti-imperialist either. They just want their own imperialist bloc
right.
that's outside of NATO. And like she falls into the camp that they don't like. Like she's pro. I put it in our little Discord that we
Yeah.
got. Like she's over here like supporting Zelensky and shit. Like she's fully on board with Ukraine.
Yeah.
She's pro
Well, she,
NATO and she's pro
well,
Taiwan.
yeah, she says that if Ukraine fails, that it will actually make Europe like a slave of China, not Russia.
Yeah.
Like that was her way of saying it somehow, and it's like, whoa.
Like I get why like your typical like fucking Republican person whatever would like claim like think she's actually based, but anyone who even remotely tries to call themselves a communist and they're trying to do this bullshit revisionist
Right.
interpretation of imperialism where they support these ridiculous people. I mean, even by that logic, it makes no sense to
Then
still
you have
support around her.
people who deny that she's a fascist. You show, a video of her actually praising Mussolini,
They don't care.
and yeah, I know, no, yeah, I know. And what's actually
Yeah.
interesting is the likes of Steven Crowder and Dish D'Souza are like working overtime to try to cover up this lady's like fascist ties.
Yeah, no surprise.
Well, technically, she doesn't identify herself as a fascist, so technically she can't be. Didn't
Well-
you know that?
Well, those people, there's no way they don't know that she.
Doesn't like her party like symbol like
I
supposed to
already-
symbolize
I-
like the eternal flame of Mussolini or some shit?
I
Like,
already saw a headline saying that she's a post-fascist. So
what?
yeah, it's real crazy. I'll look for
What?
it again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There's no
Yeah.
such thing as a post-fascist. You're just a
No.
fascist.
What do you mean post-fascist? Like, I
Oh,
don't turn around to
post-fascist. I
people
thought you
and go.
said
I don't turn around to people and go, "Oh, I'm now a Marxist, so I'm a post-fascist." No, I'm just a fucking Marxist. I was once a fascist. I'm now a Marxist. So I go post-fascism because that's implying a tie to it. You're supposed to fucking obliterate that shit, negate that motherfucking negation, and become post-fascism. I don't. Just
yeah, and
stupid rhetoric to
post
push the fucking
anything.
can down the road.
Post anything just puts a bad taste in my mouth, considering the cancer
Right.
known as post-leftism.
right.
I mean, is
yeah.
socialism called post-capitalism? Because if I remember rightly, negation
Well-
actually points out that, like, really communism would be post-capitalism because socialism is still stained
Yeah.
with it in its early years. Like, it's
Yeah.
not capitalist, but it's got some dirty stains, and capitalism can re-rise again at any point during socialism, even in the highest
Yeah.
stage of socialism. I'm not saying communism specifically because some people get confused with the terminology. The highest stage of socialism, where the classes have been eliminated within the state, and that country is now a working class country. It can't fully dissolve into communism until the whole world is in that state. And at that point, the global class divide still exists, so the country is still susceptible to outside bourgeois forces
Yeah.
and inside petty bourgeois consciousness. Even though they may have eliminated all forms of class disparity, consciousness is important to also be conglomerated around the proletarian class conscious, and only the proletarian class conscious.
Yeah, I mean, we still got vestiges of feudalism too. Like you always carry like
Yeah.
vestiges
Yeah.
from the previous mode of production. I mean, think about it, we still got fucking landlords right now. Like,
Socialism is the
tipping.
negation of feudalism. It's the full negation of feudalism.
yep, the full negation. That's why I said
I
negation of the negation. There's always
I
there
actually
can't just
think
be
we
one
could-
negation. Yeah.
I think we should continue discussion another time because I'm getting really tired.
Okay.
Any final thoughts
Fair
about?
enough. We got 3 hours down. So.
Yeah,
You guys got any final thoughts about what we were discussing?
like Italy or
Anything?
so. I'll go first, I guess. My final thoughts is Italy never really had a defascification.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was never really any denazification either, but Italy, it was really bad there.
You can find Italian Nazis, but yeah, the fascists never went away. They just changed their name like 7 times.
Yeah,
They worked with the CIA in the 50s, 60s, 70s to attack communists.
and I think the whitewashing of the fascists is also pretty bad because let's not remember, which country was it that killed more brown people? It wasn't Nazi Germany, it was Italy. in Africa, in Libya, in Ethiopia. But that just kind of gets all whitewashed away. It's like, oh yeah, we're not gonna have any war crimes about that. We're not gonna actually talk about that. We gotta talk about the crimes in Europe. It's like,
Well, here's
Well, I
another
mean, what's
thing.
it? Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, you wanted something interesting. Did you know that the current prime minister of Italy, or who was just elected, did you know she was part of a fascist you know token convention called Hobbit, whatever you call it. It's a thing that goes on in Italy of
Oh,
fascists that are token fans.
Um, yeah, I know what you're on
You
about.
mean J.R.R. Tolkien?
No,
Like
no,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Hobbit,
yeah.
the
The
yeah,
guy,
Hobbit camp.
the guy
Lord
who
of the
wrote Lord of the
Rings.
Rings and all that. Yeah,
Yeah, she attended them.
I
I,
mean,
it's not.
like all fantasy, fucking, there's always a lot of fascists that like it.
I figured I'd just
Yeah.
bring it. It'd be an
Star
interesting thing to
Wars.
brought. It'd be an interesting thing to brought up, and not to mention for those of you who watch my community tabs, yeah, there's some weebs that did fan art with this person, and oh, I don't want to even discuss it because I feel sick.
But on the point of fascism, so it's like one thing that people need to remember with fascists, any type, Nazi or fucking whatever the fuck, theocrat, um, these types of neo-feudalism, petty bourgeois socialism, they are the most intellectual enemies we have to deal with. Revisionists and open fascists. Revisionism, even when it wants to go back to liberalism, always ends up going down the road of fascism because the only way the liberals can get in power, and they know this, is by empowering fascism and taking those positions. The whole point of fascism, from the bourgeois standpoint, and the petty bourgeoisie gain to benefit off it, that's why they're so supportive of this, is to reset capitalism. I think people seem to forget that the 1800s was misery for the proletariat. So was the early 1900s. You know who it wasn't misery for? The fucking petty bourgeoisie and the middle class, the aristocracy. They lived in fucking luxury while everyone lived in squalor.
oh yeah, they
They
fucking
want
love
that again. They
it.
want the
Yeah,
great reset back to the late 1700s so they can go through it all again and live like their forefathers.
yeah, it's almost
Mike,
like the whole "Make America Great Again" thing.
Michael
Is a direct
Parenti
shout
actually.
out to
Yeah,
them.
that's a callback to the 50s. That's something that actually cropped up in the 70s and the 80s as a callback to the 50s.
Yeah,
You know what's like interesting about Michael Parenti? He actually brought that up in many of his talks about the bourgeoisie wanting to reset things back to 1900.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Especially the British. The British want to go back to the period between 1873. Actually, they are a big fan of the 1700s too because everyone was their bitch and had to go to them for production, and so they turned us into fucking penniless fucking wage slaves because they were already workers already got paid bad in capitalism. But when Workshop of the World started, as you've seen in China with the horrible pay that workers get in sweatshops, they did the same here. That's why people like Caleb will go, white people in sweatshops too. Yeah, sure, I know it doesn't equate them because we've treated the third world worse than we ever treated our own workers, but we still did treat them in very similar ways. And this happened with the Workshop of the World, where the aristocracy and the upper class got fucking loaded while everyone else lived in squalor, and they worked them to death. And they're very fond of that period, the 1700s and the late 1600s and the early 1800s. But then the mid 1800s, you start to get the period of time where France's mass industrialization programs have really started to hit. Germany is unificating and industrializing. Russia was industrializing massively from like the late 1860s, early 1870s. US started its industrialization program in the mid to late 1800s as well. British Empire started to industrialize its dominions in the 1800s as well. Canada um, the British Raj uh, and Australia,
yeah. You know
mostly for
what?
things like steel production and oil production. And so this process is really, really fetishized by people because in that period, that's where you start to see the big wealth extraction and slavery is still reinforced in America and is reinforced around the globe throughout the British Empire. No matter how much they've illegalized it, they still used it massively. The British Raj itself, to avoid a lot of these anti-slave laws, was seen as its own separate entity, a company more than. Before it was the British Raj, it was the East India Trade Corporation. Came the British Raj, and it was its own dominion. Technically, well, it wasn't a dominion. Sorry, it was a direct holding, but it was still like it was. They used excuses to excuse it of a lot of practices that would have otherwise had it regulated in similar ways to places like Canada. Mind you, that wouldn't have made it any better, but the caste system they had in place was fucking like, it was the most extreme caste system in the British Empire at the time, as far as I can fucking remember. I might be wrong. I don't know everything about the British. I may be English, but we're not all a hive mind, as you might think. Our attenuation towards colonialism might make people disagree otherwise. But that period's quite fetishized. But with the British, they really like 1870 to 1922 because that's the high roller of the British Empire. Where while they had challenges all throughout that period from the French, the Americans, the Germans, and the Russians, they were grooming the Russians and were likely going to benefit off them even if they became a challenger. They were profiting off the American and the French rise because then Britain was like, okay, well, we're just going to export our production to you then, cheaper production, nice. You guys are doing workshop of the world, wicked. Load our pockets up. And after all of that pocket loading, by 1922, they were still the leading empire, and Britain developed this and fascism constantly tries to push this type of ideation, and I can't I imagine it came from the British, but it could have predated the British adoption of it. But by the time of the late 1800s, towards the end of Victoria's reign, Britain saw itself, and other empires saw it as this as well. The kingdoms of Germany, Russia, Sweden, Norway, they all. I think Denmark started a king at this point as well, isn't it? Maybe. And Belgium did. Belgium, those monarchies, which were all related to the British monarchy as well, just to add that spanner in the works, they all looked up to the British Empire as like this father figure thing, and the British thought that they were like the father of all the other empires and that they wouldn't subvert them, that they could keep them under control. That's actually why there's that funny letter from the German emperor, the Kaiser, where like he writes a letter to I think it was to Nicholas the Second, where he's like
He called him Nicky.
yeah, he's like, Nikki, I'm heartbroken that you would invade me like this, and that Georgie would invade us too. Like, this would never have happened under grandmother Vicky.
You're breaking my heart.
Grandmother Vicky would have stopped this separatism.
Oh god.
Fucking
But
what's
this
it?
is
What's that thing that the Dengists call people when they fucking criticize Dengism and like that,
Ultra?
they're not even Marxist but they call them it. It's like that. It's like fucking
red liberals.
no. Where they like you're like sectioning off people.
You're sectarian.
Sectarianism. That's it. Oh, what is with this royal sectarianism, Vicky and Nikki and Georgie? Granny Vic would never have let this happen. He's having a
Is it-
Wilhelm moment. He's going all Kaiser Wilhelm, even though he's supposed to be fucking. I thought this was. I thought this was fucking. What's it? Kaiser Wilhelm the Second, not Kaiser Wilhelm the First. Come on, man.
Does anyone else have anything other things you'd like to say before I end the stream?
Oi, Oswald Mosley, I fucked your dad, and what?
So what about you, Noob and Flashy?
I mean, for me, I would just. I mean, yeah, we pretty much summed everything up. I think I'm good.
Well, I don't got much to say except death to fascism and revisionists, and all power to the people. May the people of Iran win in their struggle against their fascist theocracy. And I have
America sucks.
nothing more to say except weebs deserve to be all to be put in a gulag. No exceptions. Fuck weebs.
The history of the British Empire is the worst anime I've ever watched. 1 star.
I actually, they should have ended the British anime with the Churchill arc. It was the greatest arc in the British anime.
True.
That's a spicy take. Should really have ended it before it became Britain. The English Republic should have been an actual republic, not just the English kingdom. But Oliver Cromwell has taken the power now. Look at you, King Henry VIII, guy that's dead that killed my grandfather. Look who's in power now. It's like fucking hell. Like, chill out, brother. Chill out.
Actually, I got a thing. I don't know if this will get this banned. I don't care. Fuck the King of England. Fuck King Charles.
King Charles III should live up to Charles I. It caused the British fucking Empire to go down like the English Empire.
Yes, down with King Charles III.